Thank you so much for the kind welcome. Senior professors, Head of Department of Economics, University of Peradeniya, staff members, students and well-wishers, my dear friends. It's given me an immense pleasure and honor to come home again in this seminar after 3 decades or so. I was graduated from the University of Peradeniya in 1990. We were the batch in the intake in 1983. So we were the batch which spent there for more than 7 years due to the JVP uprising. And so we have seen a lot during this period. And my batchmates are now hailing in the same university and in other universities as professors and lecturers. And I'm very glad to see many batchmates also join in this the conversation, and it's a kind of a emotional time also, because I didn't have any contacts thereafter to the University of Peradeniya, except 1 or 2 times I visited over there for some seminars. And thank you so much for Professor Prasanna for inviting me and to discuss a topic which many people think it is a bygone. Like, now, why should we learn history or economic history of a country? Because the current is very important and the future is more important than at the present. So why should we talk about the past? And we have to focus more on our own problems, what we are experiencing today and tomorrow. But there is a song sung by one of the reggae favorites, Bob Marley. His song on slaves, Buffalo Soldier. In that song, there's a verse called, if you don't know your history, you are not where you are coming from, and you cannot progress well. So history is important, and economic history is far more important for a country like Sri Lanka to learn about what we were doing and how we were doing and what we are doing currently. And based on that, we can make our decisions and also policy changes, and also for our knowledge, update our knowledge. If you know the past, and we can learn from the past, and we can take decisions for the present for a better future. So that is the reason why I chose this topic rather than focusing on a current topic and take some figures and run a regression and produce some results. And that may be very catchy. But this subject during our time was one of the main subjects we learned throughout an year, while we were in Peradeniya. I don't know whether this is taught anymore in the curricula. In Colombo, we don't teach anymore this particular subject. So I thought of giving you a kind of a perspective, historical perspective of what Sri Lanka's journey of development. And I will take you through the colonial period, a brief period of colonial history, and then our independence and the startup advantages Sri Lanka has, and then the challenges we face at that particular time. And we will take the journey to the present situation of the economy. So this is a time where most people usually take a nap in order to take some, rejuvenate their metabolism system, and then move, to the next 3 o'clock lecture or 4 o'clock lecture. So this is not a very good time to have a kind of a historical perspective kind of a subject. But I'll try my best to keep you awake and try to understand certain things which we already know, but I will put these things into perspective. So I have a presentation for you. And I will share the presentation, and based on the presentation, we will be able to move on. So this is journey of the Sri Lankan economy from the colonial time to the independence. So we'll take those slides and then move forward. And this is one of the epic, I think, portrait, not a picture, not a photograph. It is a portrait of showing our independence, and it's a kind of a pride for every Sri Lankan. This type of a picture showing that we gained independence on this particular day, and it has been shown. Now, before we gained independence, we were underwent 450 long years of colonial rule. And we know that before colonial rule, Sri Lanka, as in many other countries, had a very formal indigenous system. So we had a kind of a self-sufficient villages, and self-sufficient villages were basically known as Gama. In Sri Lanka, we know this as Gama, and in England, these were known as Mano, and in Japan, these were known as Hen. So in a Gama, people lived in a simple life, led a simple life, and they had very few needs and wants. The production was basically based on subsistence production. So they any surplus produced, these surpluses were taken by the rulers, and in order to govern the country, and also in order to build monuments and religious places, etc., etc. So the surpluses were produced, but not very in a larger quantities, but the economy was basically self-sufficient and subsistent production. So many believe that this type of an economy would be very stagnant economy. There were little progress happened in this kind of an economy, according to Rostow. Traditional societies normally produces much less than their capacity. And in Sri Lanka, we know that the caste-based system prevailed in the production structure. So the production was entirely based on the caste system. Rajakarya system was mainly used to get the labor for common work, to get the waterways clear and any public work to be done. These are every year, an able individual should provide free service to the government in order to maintain the public utilities. And then surplus production, as I said, extracted through taxation, various kind of tax, and economic systems were based on norms and traditions. So the caste-based system, so the particular segments of society followed the same kind of economic activities as their generations go through. Economic system, basically barter system, use of money was extremely low, and the barter system keep these people dependent on each other. So therefore, minimum use of money, not for a common man's use. Trade and businesses were considered in Sri Lanka, so Sri Lankan society, indigenous society, trade and businesses were not very much welcomed. And people were basically graded according to what they were doing. So agriculture has been considered as one of the noble professions, and then they were put in the social spectrum to the top. And very few items actually purchased from outside world, like salt, dry fish, lace, etc., etc. Other than that, many items were, all the requirements for a village were produced within the village itself, and the mobilization between villages were also limited. So therefore, it's a kind of a self-sufficient, protected enclaves, and village headmen were basically taking responsibilities of the betterment of the villages, all the responsibility of the villages. So this is the kind of a situation what we had in a natural setup or a traditional setup. So during the Portuguese time and the Dutch periods, from 1505 to 1796, there were very few changes that happened to the economy, because their rule was confined to only 20 miles from any point of the seashore in Ceylon. So they couldn't rule the country, the entire country, because their rules were mainly confined within the coastal area. But things were happening in a drastic manner. Changes were happening in a drastic manner after the capture of Kandyan Kingdom in 1815, and most importantly, after the Colebrook-Cameron reforms in 1833. From this point, the British made deep-rooted changes to the economic system of Sri Lanka by introducing many things. Two main things were introduced. One, the plantation system, and the second, the plantation-related infrastructure services. So these two, differences or new introductions, plantation sector and also the infrastructure, made the economy more dynamic and more dependent. And we have many books written on this, historical books. Peradeniya University Library is very rich of these books. Students, please just visit this library and the Ceylon section. You will find these informations there, and have at least one or two books. Just have a glance through and you will get a lot of information from this. So now the colonial rule during the time of British, there were a lot of changes. Plantations were introduced and infrastructure facilities were established, and independent period. So I'll expedite the British rule to the independent time. By the time of independence, the following were the main characteristic of the Sri Lankan economy. Number one, we had a dual economic system at the time of independence. Dual economy, a modern sector side by side with the traditional sector. These two sectors, plantation sector was a modern sector, and the traditional agriculture sector, subsistence agriculture sector, was the traditional sector. And at the same time, Sri Lanka had an open economy with a vibrant export sector. So plantation agriculture was based on foreign capital, foreign labor, and foreign technology, and foreign management, and produced for foreign market. So we had an open economy with a vibrant export sector. And it was a dependent economy because it depends on exports of tea, rubber, and coconut in order to purchase whatever commodities which are used by Sri Lankans. So during the British period, the locals or the people were transformed as the people, those who use imported commodities rather than locally produced commodities. So local production was very much less, and imported commodities or imported goods were widely used. And the consumption pattern has changed drastically during the British period. So relatively well-developed physical infrastructure, especially roads, railways, finance, insurance, and telecommunication sectors. So where the good thing that happened in the UK in road building, railways, and banking, and all other telecommunication in particular, these basic things, basic inventions, whenever they started in Britain, they were immediately introduced in Ceylon, and some changes were introduced in Ceylon before they introduced in India. So Sri Lanka happened to be a good boy in the British Empire. That is why they basically brought the good things first to Sri Lanka, and then took those things to other colonial countries. So, and it's well-developed infrastructure, basically we can see as a result of the plantation sector. Now we know that the plantation sector, transportation was very important. Then one might ask that, okay, plantation sector, Kandy and also the highland area should be connected to the main ports, maybe Galle or Batigolo or Colombo. These are important places where the exports are taken place. Then why they have developed the roads to Kandy, from Kandy to Jaffna, and Kandy to Trincomalee, and then from Madhavachir to Mana. And why did they do that? So these are not the areas or roads that are directly connected with the plantation sector. And these are basically because of the security reasons. So due to security reasons and also due to plantations, these roads and railways were built. Financial centers and also insurance, storage, telecommunications, postal services especially were first introduced in Ceylon. And to mark another thing, the radio broadcast has been in Asia for the first time started in Ceylon. So we had a lot of things to proud about it, but we don't value those things because this will happen as as a history. So people don't know what kind of infrastructure we had at the time of independence, where while other colonial countries, they didn't have any of these facilities under the British rule. And also independent judiciary, law enforcement, and those things were very much well developed and well articulated in the country during the British rule. Stable political system with a well-established democracy was established. And this was established not in the 20th century, even at the end of the 18th century, this democratic transformation started in the 18th century. So they will say, while they were doing it in Colombo Cameron reforms, these things were changed. But universal franchise, voting rights were given in 1931, just 3 years after they were given in Britain. So as I said, so the universal franchise was given in the UK in 1928, but 3 years later, this has been granted to Ceylon, and not only for a particular group, for everyone. And this is in India also. This is not done in that way, but in Ceylon, despite many locals, they didn't like to give the voting rights to the uneducated people, like the elites. They believe that the giving a voting right to educated people has some merits, but giving a universal franchise to everyone may result in a few families will dominate in politics, and they will control the entire country's wealth and assets. Some people or some British as well as locals believe that universal franchise should not be given to everyone in the country. So whether they were right or wrong is proven right now. And if you look at the current situation, right, since independence, there were few families were dominating the political arena, and they were controlling the country's basic wealth, and also they were influential in making political decisions. So that is the democratic principles, and parliamentary democracy has been established. And also we can see an active civil society. Not only the parliament, but the civil society was very active. Trade unions and other civil society organizations were very active during that period. I don't know whether I'm doing it because this is in English. So I just want to summarize those things in Sinhala and Tamil. Sri Lanka ආර්ථික ඉතිහාසයේ ඉතාමත් වැදගත්. මන්දයත් ඉතිහාසය ඉගෙන නොගත් කෙනෙකුට ඉදිරිය ගැන තර්ක කිරීමට අවකාශයක් නැහැ. හේතුව කලින් කුමක්ද සිදු වුණේ කියන එක දැනගත්තා නම් ඉදිරිය ගැන හොඳ අවබෝධයකින් කරුණු ඒකරාශී කරගෙන තීරණ ගන්න පුළුවන් වෙනවා. ලංකාවේ බ්‍රිතාන්‍ය යුගයේ ඇතුළත ප්‍රධාන මාතෘකා ඔස්සේ බැලුවොත් ආර්ථික වශයෙන් ඔවුන් විසින් හඳුන්වා දුණු ප්ලාන්ටේෂන් එක, එහෙම නැත්නම් වතු ආර්ථිකය, කොඳු නැටියක් වැනි අදත් ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ ආර්ථිකයේ ඉතාමත් වැදගත් කාර්යභාරයක් ඉටු කරනවා එම ප්ලාන්ටේෂන් සෙක්ටර් එක. එතකොට දැන් ඊට අමතරව බ්‍රිතාන්‍ය යුගයේ ඇති වුණු වෙනස්කම් නිසා ලංකාවේ ආර්ථිකයේ අවශ්‍ය කරන ආර්ථිකයට ඉදිරි ගමනට අවශ්‍ය කරන පසුබිම සැකසුණා කියන එක තමයි මෙතෙන්දී වැදගත් වෙන්නේ. இலங்கையினுடைய ஆட்சியிலே இலங்கையினுடைய வரலாற்றை நாங்கள் பொருளாதார வரலாற்றை நாங்கள் எடுத்து பார்க்கின்ற போது இங்கே பிரித்தானியருடைய பங்களிப்பு மிக அதிகமாக இருந்திருக்கிறது. பிரித்தானியருடைய காலத்திலே தான் இலங்கையிலே ஒரு நவீன துறை உருவாக்கப்பட்டிருக்கிறது. அந்த நவீன துறை இன்றும் இலங்கையினுடைய பொருளாதாரத்திலே ஒரு முதுகெலும்பாக செயற்பட்டு வருகிறது. ஆகவே நம்முடைய எதிர்காலத்தை பற்றி திட்டமிட வேண்டுமாக இருந்தால் கடந்த காலத்திலே என்ன நடந்தது என்பது பற்றிய ஒரு அறிவு முக்கியமாக இருக்கிறது. எனவே அந்த அறிவை அடிப்படையாக வைத்துக்கொண்டு நாங்கள் எதிர்காலத்தை நன்றாக திட்டமிடக்கூடியதாக இருக்கும். எனவே இந்த கடந்த கால அனுபவங்களை பற்றி மாணவர்கள் அறிந்து வைத்திருப்பது மிக முக்கியம். உங்களுடைய பல்கலைக்கழக நூலகத்திலே இது சம்பந்தமான நூல்கள், அரிய நூல்கள் பல இருக்கின்றன. அவற்றிலே ஒரு சிலவற்றையாவது சென்று பாருங்கள். ரைட். වඩා වැදගත් වෙන්නේ rule based efficient administrative system එකක් ඒ කාලේ develop වුණා. ඒ කියන්නේ there was a broad based and efficient administrative apparatus, and they were very skilled and well disciplined bureaucracy. So the bureaucracy was trained in English and they were trained in British traditions, and when compared to their efficiency levels and also the dedication and also their administrative, the method of administration was almost mirror image whatever they happened in the UK. So even several decades after the independence, you can witness this type of efficient bureaucratic systems in the country. And most importantly, there was a middle class, because British Empire, if we look at the British Empire, there were certain differences. Some are occupational colonies, some are not. Ceylon has not been an occupational colony anyway. It was not occupied by the British. So therefore, they trained the locals to rule the country. So therefore, there was a middle class, and this middle class was important in order to conduct the economic activities as expected. So the presence of a middle class was very important for a dynamic economy. Most important, not only the middle class, but a healthy, educated people. Healthy and educated people. The healthy people mean when we gain political independence, comparing to other peer nations in South Asia and even Asia, Sri Lankan people enjoyed a comparably far better health conditions and also good health practices, thanks to the British rule and also British the introduction of Western medical practices throughout the country. Next, education system. As I said, because British did not rule the country as an occupational colony, so they trained the people, trained the locals. Initially, they trained the people, those who are living in the coastal areas, in English medium education. Even today, if you look at the schools, best schools that are located in the country, they were located in the coastal area. So English educated, converted into Christianity, and the locals became the elites. And when we gained political independence, these elites were politically influential and they are wealthy also, and they had the middle class along with some business people. So presence of a middle class was a kind of a startup advantage. And people basically, they were got used to money, how to use money and how to conduct monetary related activities. Sri Lankans were, or Ceylonese were rather more, familiar to these monetized systems at that particular time of independence. So at the time of our political independence, Ceylon was placed in a far better position compared to other neighboring countries. So even this better position prevailed even in the 60s, 50s and 60s. So when you look at the per capita income level and any other yardstick, Ceylon was far better than other Asian countries. So we'll have some information in the next slide. So they had a sound domestic, sound external financial positions, local financial positions, because the country was unified in 1833. Because before 1833, Kandyan Kingdom was ruled separately, and the rest of the country was ruled separately. So there were two entities prevailed in the country. So Colombo Cameron reforms brought these two entities into a single unit. So the country was unified in 1833 with the Colombo Cameron reforms. So that saved a lot of money, and the internal finances, the British, under the British Empire, the most important rule is that, so the colonies should be ruled by generating money within the colonies itself. So the mother country should not be provide money to rule the colonies. So that was main objective of the colonialism. So therefore, Ceylonese economy created a lot of wealth through taxation and other means. So the government finances were extremely sound, and external finance, export-import trade, always made trade surpluses. So the internal position was extremely sound, and external position also extremely sound. So therefore, Sri Lanka had large foreign exchange reserves, and sometimes these reserves were used to finance the British expenses or their budgets also in one or two occasions, they say. So therefore, compared to other countries in the region, like India and other countries, colonial countries, there were a lot of bloodshed. There were a lot of, fight and a lot of, damages. So the other countries gained political independence by shedding blood. But in Sri Lanka, nothing has happened in that sort. So no major events or major, episodes of killings and agitation campaigns on things like that. So compared to other countries in the region, D. Silva says Sri Lanka was an oasis of stability, peace, and order. So it's an orderly, small nation which has been considered as one of the promising countries in the region under the colonial rule. Political leaders after independence, they basically, when you take the Sinhalese or the Tamils or the Muslims, they were well-educated political leaders, and they were in a same kind of a westernized Ceylonese group. So they were from a special class of westernized Ceylonese group, said by Ivor Jennings. And this has been basically known as the Kalu Suddhas. In local colloquial language, they will say, Suddha Nidahasa Dunne Kalu Suddhanta Kela. Right? So this is a special class of politicians. They were from the affluent families. All these positive startup conditions were there for Sri Lanka, and many countries, even the international organizations like the World Bank mission visited in 1951 in the country, and they analyzed or they reviewed the economy, and they produced a volume like a dictionary size report on Sri Lankan economy. And they have highlighted certain things. And in the most important highlight was, they said that unlike other countries in the Asian, or unlike other countries in the former colonial world, Sri Lanka would never face financial difficulties in order to finance its development expenditures. So therefore, we had money also. So no problem with the money. So finances were available. When the British left the country, there were some reserve accounts. From the reserve account at that time, nearly 1,000 million Sri Lankan rupees were there. Nearly 1,000 million rupees were there. So money was available. Startup conditions were extremely good. And therefore, many believe that Sri Lanka would prove the best of Asia, and the country will develop within a short period of time, showing an example of how a democratic country with a small open economy can develop after colonial rule. But what happened thereafter was a known history. And you can see from this particular table, in the 60s even, the per capita GDP, in terms of per capita GDP, Sri Lanka was parallel to South Korea, and other countries, Thailand, Pakistan, and other countries were much more below than Sri Lanka. Malaysia, a little higher, and Singapore, because of the size, a little bit higher. But South Korea was comparable to Sri Lanka, and Thailand much less than Sri Lanka in 1960. But you can see this, how this has been changed. And South Korea from 152 US dollar to, in 2019, its per capita GDP increased up to 28,675, while Sri Lanka's from 152 to 4,012 in 2019. So countries, those who have not having a good startup condition at that particular time, surpass Sri Lanka and achieve in economic development, while Sri Lanka still struggling to just survive. And we were currently at ground zero, and we were basically bankrupted, and we are basically struggling to just survive. After independence, our economic history runs through with political regime changes. So whenever political regime changes, economic policies were the first victim, according to one of the prominent planners in the country, Gamini Korea, Dr. Gamini Korea. He said that whenever the government changed, the first victim was the economic policy. So you can see that open economic policies, liberal economic policies prevailed in 1948 to 1956 during the first two government from UNP, and the closed economy 1956 to 65, SLFP, partially opened economy 65 to 70, and then closed economy 1970 to 77, open economy there again in 1977 to 1994. All these changes, economic policy changes, were happening along with the regime changes. So this is a very important and salient feature of the Sri Lankan economy. But this particular pattern has changed in 1994 onwards, because whenever the government changed, the policy changes followed by the government change. And 1994 onwards, there were little changes happened to economic policy, because 17 years of UNP rule from 1977 to 1994 made the economy, the open economic policies were deep-rooted into the economy. So the 1994 government could not revise it. And the world also going in a same direction. Open economic policies and neoliberal policies were mainly dominating at that particular time, and the IMF and the World Bank, and they were also supporting this view. So 1994, even a government changed to a left-wing political party, People's Alliance, under the leadership of Chandrika Kumaratunga, and they could not change the economic policies, and the open economic policies were followed with a human face. So they're known as open economy with a human face. But what is that human face? We don't know exactly what it was meant by, but some argue that, okay, open economic policies were basically very painful for the lower spectrum in the society. So therefore, the 1994 government was so keen and so looking to improve the life of the marginalized people. And that is what they meant by a human face. Anyway, that regime went up to a decade long, 1994 to 2005, and 2005, the national economy under Mahinda Chintana 1. So during this period, and the period followed by 2010 onwards, the two periods, Mahinda Chintana 1 and Mahinda Chintana 2, these two periods were basically reversing the policies that were applicable at that particular previous time since 1977. So from 1977 to 2005, Sri Lanka basically enjoyed or underwent open economic policies. But 2005 onwards, that open economic policies were reversed, and national economic policy, or so-called the national economy, or the German model, has been implemented. We don't know clearly what is that German model, but building a strong national economy, not doing much with the international trade, even though they said that they are going to build several hubs in the country, but these were not very clearly indicated. But we have seen that there was a clear indication of their anti-export bias. So looking for producing for the domestic market and strengthening the village level domestic economy by various projects and programs, we can see that the clear departure from open economic policies to a much closer economic policy. And in the interim period, for a 3-year period, 2015 to 2018 to be exact period, there was a reversal of the policies because of this good governance period. And they were basically looking at the Western models to reverse the economic policies and to do with more with international community, or bringing the so-called Western intellectuals and researchers and also academics in order to get their advice and try to practice those advice in the country. And if I remember correctly, there were few intellectuals came from Harvard, and they advised the government at a particular time. Economic seminars or economic conferences were conducted without inviting economists from the local universities or other institutions. So mainly looking at the international advice at this particular time. So thereafter, what went wrong is known to everybody, and there was a government change. 69 million people have voted for a change. Vistas of prosperity and spenders came into being, and 2022, with a people surprising, that regime has been changed. The head of the state has been changed, but the regime has been patchworked and is continuing. So what we are having 2022 onwards, a bankrupt bailout economy, bankrupt bailout economy from 2022 onwards. So if you look at economic policies and policy changes, these were aligned with political regime changes. So therefore, in Sri Lanka, economic policy changes were frequently happened whenever there was a political change or regime change. And unlike in India, there was no kind of a permanent policy, 5-year plans or 10-year plans. And there were economic plans were basically articulated in the country, but they were never implemented. And when you look at this Mahinda Chintana 1 and 2, there was no need for Mahinda Chintana 2 if they completely implement the proposals under Mahinda Chintana 1 and review the progress and continue with expanding this into another period. And we can see these are political slogans and politically motivated economic policies, which were not having kind of a continuity or economic rationale any whatsoever. So therefore, these were implemented for the whims and fancies of the leaders of the country. So we are here at the bankrupt economy in 2022 onwards. We can see some visuals here, how during this particular, in the post-independent period, our economic growth has been, economic performance has been done. So 1960 to 2015, you can see this economic growth. And economic growth, when you put a straight line here, roughly around 5% and not more than that during this particular period. There are, you can see the spikes and many reasons. 1972, because this is the period where the GDP uprising, and you can see this economic growth rate was 0. And there was another negative growth rate in 2001. This is because of the airport attack by the LTTE. And apart from these two, mostly economic growth was positive, and there were spikes in 1968 period with the government change. And also you can see here in 1976, 77, 78 period, there was another spike over here. And then you can see, most importantly, immediately after the war, there was a spike once again. Right, so I'll repeat that the growth process after I give a summary in Tamil and Sinhala. නිදහසෙන් පස්සේ ලංකාවේ ආර්ථිකයේ වර්ධනය, එහෙම නැත්නම් ලංකාවේ ආර්ථික ප්‍රතිපත්තිවල වෙනස් වීම, ලංකාවේ දේශපාලන වෙනස් වීම හා සම්බන්ධ වෙනවා. සාමාන්‍යයෙන් ඉන්දියාව වගේ රටක ඇති වෙන ප්‍රතිපත්තිමය ස්ථාවරතාව වගේ ලංකාවේ ප්‍රතිපත්තිමය වශයෙන් යම්කිසි ප්‍රතිපත්තියක් අනුගමනය කරම නැත්නම් දේශීය ප්‍රතිපත්තියක් අනුගමනය කිරීමේ තිබිලා නැහැ. අවස්ථාවකම ප්‍රතිපත්තිමය රාමුවත් වෙනස් වී තිබෙනවා. මේ දකින්නට පුළුවන් අපේ ආර්ථිකයේ සෑම අවස්ථාවකම. මේ ස්ලයිඩ් එකේ පේනවා මනාව මේ කාල වකවානුවල ආර්ථිකයේ වෙනස් වීම සිදු වුණා, ප්‍රතිපත්තිමය වෙනස් වීම සිදු වුණා. මේ ප්‍රතිපත්තිමය වෙනස් වීම සිදුවීමට හේතු වුණේ ආණ්ඩු වෙනස් වීම. සමහර විට 1994 එම ප්‍රතිපත්තිමය වෙනස් වීම සිදු වුණේ ඊටාම අල්පයක් ලෙස. මොකද එවකට පැවති ආර්ථික චින්තනය වූයේ නාම ලිබරල් වාදී චින්තනය නිසා 94 පාලනය කරපු එම ආණ්ඩුව PA ගවර්න්මන්ට් කියලා අපි කියන්නේ, ඒ ආණ්ඩුව සමහර විට ඒවා වෙනස් කිරීමට උත්සුක වුණේ නැහැ. ජනතාවට අහිතකර බලපෑම් ඇති කරන ඒ ප්‍රතිපත්තීන් තුළ යම්කිසි සහනයක් ජනතාව වෙත ලබා දීමට උත්සාහ වුණා. ඒ නිසා තමයි මේ පොලිසි එකට අපි කිව්වේ open economy with a human face කියලා. නමුත් 2005 බලයට පැමිණි ආණ්ඩුව විසින් මේ ප්‍රතිපත්ති හාස්පසින්ම වෙනස් අතකට යොමු කරලා දේශීය ආර්ථිකය ශක්තිමත් කිරීමේ දිශාවට සිද්ධාන්තයට යොමු වුණා. කාලවකවානු දෙකක් ඔස්සේ මේක සිදු වුණා. එතෙන්දී අපිට බලන්න පුළුවන් දේශීය ආර්ථිකය ශක්තිමත් කිරීම සිදු කරන ගමන්ම විදේශීය ආර්ථිකයන් සමග, එහෙම නැත්නම් ඕපන් ඉකොනොමි කියලා කියන්නේ ලිබරල් වාදී ආර්ථිකක්‍රමයේ අපි ක්‍රමයෙන් බැහැර වෙන්නට පටන් ගත්තා. මේක එක අතකට හොඳයි, ඒ වැරදි නැහැ. නමුත් අද ගෝලීකරණ වෙලා තියෙන රටක, ගෝලීකරණ වෙලා තියෙන භූමිකාවක් යටතේ යම්කිසි රටක් අයින් වෙලා තම ප්‍රතිපත්ති රාමුව වෙනස් කරනවා නම් එම රටට තියෙන්න ඕනේ ඒ සහ සම්බන්ධ සම්පත් සහ ක්ලියර් ඒ නැත්තම් ඊටමත් දැඩි දැක්මක් තියෙන්නට ඕනේ. ඊටමත් නිවැරදි දැක්මක් තියෙන්නට ඕනේ එහා යොමු වීමට. මේ දෙකම තිබුණයි කියලා මම විශ්වාස කරන්නේ නැහැ. අවශ්‍ය කරන මූල්‍ය සම්පත තිබුණෙත් නැහැ. අත වශයෙන්ම මෙහින් අපි අදහස් කරන්නේ ආර්ථික දේශීය ආර්ථික ශක්තිමත් කරලා දේශීය කර්මාන්ත වැඩි දියුණු කරලා ඉන්පසු අපි ඒවා අපනයන දිශාවට යොමු වෙනවාද කියන එක ගැන ක්ලියර් අවබෝධයක්, එහෙම නැත්නම් පැහැදිලි අවබෝධයක් තිබුණා කියලා මම විශ්වාස කරන්නේ නැහැ. අනිත් එක තමයි මේ ප්‍රතිපත්තිවල සඳහන් කරපු මේ ප්‍රතිපත්ති ප්‍රකාශන වල සම්බන්ධ වූ ප්‍රතිපත්ති ඒ ආකාරයෙන් ක්‍රියාත්මක වුණාද කියන එකත් ඊටාම ප්‍රශ්න අතයට යොමු යුතු කරුණු වෙනවා. මොකද ඒවා හරියාකාරව මේ ප්‍රතිපත්ති රාමු අපි කියවලා බලලා තිබෙනවා. මේවා හරියාකාරව සිදු වුණා නම් මේ රටට මෙවැනි අත්පැතියකට පාත් වෙන්න අවස්ථාවක් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. එතකොට දැන් මේ ප්‍රතිපත්ති වෙනස් වීම නිතරම සිදු වූ නිසා ආර්ථිකයට ප්‍රසාරණය වීමට අවස්ථාවක් තිබුණේ නැහැ. වරින් වර බලයට පැමිණි ආණ්ඩු විසින් මේවා වෙනස් කිරීම නිසා ආර්ථික වර්ධන වේගය 5%කට වඩා මෙම කාල සීමාව ඔස්සේ පරාසය තුළම පවත්වා ගැනීමට හැකියාවක් තිබුණේ නැහැ. இலங்கையினுடைய பொருளாதார கொள்கைகள் அடிக்கடி மாறுவனவாக இருந்திருக்கின்றன. அதே போல இந்த பொருளாதார கொள்கைகள் அரசியல் மாற்றங்களுக்கு அமைவாக மாறுகின்ற ஒரு போக்கினை கொண்டிருக்கின்றன. குறிப்பாக இந்த சுதந்திரத்தின் பின்னே வந்த அரசாங்கங்கள் மூடப்பட்ட பொருளாதார கொள்கையை பின்பற்றுகின்ற அரசாங்கங்களாக ஒரு காலத்திலும் திறந்த பொருளாதாரங்களை பின்பற்றுகின்ற அரசாங்கங்களாக தொடர்ந்து இருந்திருக்கின்றன. ஆகவே அரசாங்கம் மாறுகின்ற போது கொள்கைகள் மாறுகின்றன. ஆகவே நிரந்தரமான ஒரு நீடித்த பொருளாதார கொள்கையை அவர்களால் அமுல்படுத்த முடியாமல் போயிருக்கிறது. இந்த மாற்றங்கள் 94ஆம் ஆண்டு வரையிலே தொடர்ந்து இருக்கின்றன. 94ஆம் ஆண்டிலே பதவிக்கு வந்த அரசாங்கத்தினால் அவ்வாறாக ஒரு பாரிய மாற்றத்தை ஏற்படுத்த முடியவில்லை தங்களுடைய கொள்கையிலே. ஆகவே அந்த திறந்த பொருளாதார கொள்கைக்கு ஒரு மனித முகம் என்று அந்த திறந்த பொருளாதார கொள்கையின் ஊடாக பாதிக்கப்படுகின்ற மக்கள் கூட்டத்துக்கு சலுகை வழங்குகின்ற கொள்கைகளை அமல்படுத்தினார்கள். ஆனால் 2005ஆம் ஆண்டுக்கு பின்னர் வந்த அரசாங்கம் குறிப்பாக மஹிந்த சிந்தன 1, மஹிந்த சிந்தன 2 என்று 2 பொருளாதார கொள்கைகளை முன்வைத்தது. அந்த 2 கொள்கைகள் மூலமாக திறந்த பொருளாதாரமாக இருந்த இலங்கையினுடைய பொருளாதாரம் மூடப்பட்டதாக மாற்றப்பட்டது. ஆகவே தேசிய பொருளாதாரத்தை வலுப்படுத்துகின்ற ஒரு கொள்கையை அவர்கள் கடைபிடித்தார்கள். அந்த கொள்கை தொடர்ச்சியாக பின்பற்றப்பட்டது. 2015 தொடக்கம் 19 வரையிலே இந்த கொள்கையிலிருந்து மாறுபட்டு மீண்டும் பொருளாதாரத்தை திறந்து விடுகின்ற ஒரு கொள்கை தற்காலிகமாக செயற்படுத்தப்பட்டது. அதனை தொடர்ந்து வந்த ஆட்சி மாற்றத்தின் காரணமாக அந்த கொள்கையும் அவ்வாறே போய்விட்டது. ஆகவே அந்த 2019ஆம் ஆண்டிலே வந்த ஆட்சி மாற்றத்தின் அடிப்படையிலே இலங்கையை ஒரு வளமான நாடாக மாற்ற வேண்டும் என்ற அடிப்படையிலே அந்த கொள்கை பிரகடனம் மேற்கொள்ளப்பட்டிருந்தது. அதில் சொல்லப்பட்ட விஷயங்கள் நமக்கு எல்லோருக்கும் தெரியும். ஆனால் அதில் எதையுமே அமல்படுத்த முடியாத ஒரு சூழ்நிலை நாட்டுக்கு ஏற்பட்டது. இப்போது இருக்கின்ற சூழ்நிலையிலே நாடு அங்குறுத்தடைந்திருக்கின்றது. ஆகவே எவராவது வந்து நாட்டை மீட்டெடுக்க வேண்டும் என்ற நிலைமையிலே நாடு இருக்கிறது. I think that summary would have helped to our Sinhalese and Tamil audience to get a summary of what we have discussed so far. And we can see this economic growth in some periods. We can see the spikes. 1968, because 65 to 70 period, there was a open economic policy or the partially opening the economy. So whenever you close the economy and then the next period, when you open the economy, economic activities will speed up. So that is why we can see a spike here. And you can see here 78 period, 77, the growth rate was extremely low, but 78, the growth increased. And this is because of the same reason, because you close the economy, once you open the economy, there are pent-up demand and other activities take place. As a result, the economy grows faster. And you can see 1990, 1993 periods also some spikes here. But after the war, the reconstruction and development activities shot up. So therefore, the construction industry and also telecommunication industry grew up. Tourism industry had seen a coming back. So therefore, this spikes were basically you can see. And the second spike here 2006 was due to the ceasefire, short-lived ceasefire in the economy. And you can see that this has happened because the tsunami devastation happened in the 2004 period, but 2005 and 2006 you can see there is a increase in economic growth. And this is because of the concession given by the Western governments and loan write-offs, the main reason why this kind of a higher economic growth. And thereafter you can see the next intensifying the war intensified. So therefore there were a lot of expenditures and also uncertainties happened in the economy. So with the completion of the war, there were a lot of hope in the economy. And as a result, you can see this type of economic growth. But thereafter, the economy lost its steam and economic growth plunged to the a drastic drop here. And you can see this is the economic growth was extremely lower than the growth rate what we had during the war period. And then thereafter, 2015 onwards, continually economic growth has been slowing down. So 2012 was the highest growth rate, and thereafter, Sri Lankan economy had slowed down. So the current situation, actually the economic slowing down happened in the economy after the war period. And it is intensified in 2019 onwards because of the mainly because of this the bombing happened in the churches and all in the hotels, and the Easter bombing, and also this mismanagement of corona pandemic. So it had a tremendous impact on the economy. So growth rates have been plunging as a result of this. And you can see probably the business cycle phenomenon was happening in the country. And this is some resources I have found. They have identified 7 business cycles since the independence, 7 business cycle phenomena during the period, with looking at the growth rates. So this for our own local consumption, so we can discuss and we can scrutinize this business cycle phenomenon, whether it is right or wrong, and whether we can get something from this and make use of this for the future. And see, this is the economic growth rates, and these were forecasted ones in 1920 period. So the forecasted economic growth rates were for 2021 3.5% and 2022 5.9% growth rates. These were forecasted in 2000 period. So you can see that even in 2019-20 period, they were not forecasting that the economy will go into this type of a disaster. So there were still optimism even during the corona time. The economy will not plunge into this level. The economy will recover into a positive territory. And for 2022, they were even predicted a 6% growth rate, which is, kind of a over, optimism, underestimating the impact of corona and on economic activities. And poverty levels, these are the performance throughout the history. You can see this is from 1990 onwards, poverty levels have come down. And in the recent years, you can see poverty level has increased and reaching the 2009 period. Whatever the poverty levels existed in 2009-10 period, we have reached that level in 2022. Exchange rate movements are giving certain ideas, the periods where the different regimes, the exchange rate movements are given. So 166 was the period where we had the Maitripala regime ended. So 166, and thereafter you can see violent movement in the exchange rate in the country, leading to an economic crisis. And then recent time, 2022, the size of the economy was $84.52 billion US, and this has plunged to 21. It was 84.52 billion, and 2022 it plunged to 73.7 billion. And you can see this the gradual movement of the size of the economy. The size of the economy basically remained a highest level in 2018 period, which is 87.96 billion US. So Sri Lankan economy was a less than $100 economy, $100 billion economy, which is very simple and a very small economy when compared to an economy like Singapore. Land size is very small, but the size of the economy is extremely high. Size of the economy is measured in order to compare countries with their growth rates. The growth rate alone will not provide a clear picture. So therefore, the size of the economy matters. ලංකාවේ ආර්ථිකයේ ප්‍රමාණය එහෙම නැත්නම් ලංකාවේ ආර්ථිකය අපි කියන්නේ සයිස් එක කියන ආර්ථිකයේ වෘද්ධි වේගය පමණක් ප්‍රමාණවත් නැහැ යම්කිසි රටක ආර්ථිකය ගැන විග්‍රහ කිරීමට. සමහර විට අපේ දේශපාලඥයන් සහ දේශපාලඥයන් විශේෂයෙන්ම ඔවුන් කියන්නේ ලංකාවේ ආර්ථික වෘද්ධි වේගය පසුගිය වසරවල 4%ක් 5ක් තිබියදී ඇමරිකාවේ ආර්ථික වෘද්ධි වේගය 2%යි නැත්නම් 1%ක් පමණයි. ඒ නිසා ලංකාවේ වර්ධන වේගය ඉතාමත් වැඩි සංවර්ධන වෙමින් පතන රටක් හැටියට අපි හොඳ වර්ධන වේගයක් අත්පත් කරගෙන තිබෙනවා කියන එක. ඒක හරියට කම්පෙයාර් කරනවා වගේ ලොකු විශාල මෝටර් සයිකලයක් 500cc මෝටර් සයිකලයක් 50cc මෝටර් සයිකලයක් සහ සම්බන්ධ සංසන්දනය කරනවා වගේ වැඩක්. ඒ නිසා තමයි වැදගත් වෙන්නේ ආර්ථික උද්වේගය සංසන්දනය කිරීම සමගම අපි බලන්න ඕනේ ආර්ථිකයේ ප්‍රමාණය කෙතරම් දුරට වැඩි වෙලා තිබෙනවද කියන එක. ලංකාවේ ආර්ථිකයේ වර්ධන වේගය නැත්නම් ආර්ථික වෘද්ධි වේගය 5% වැනි ප්‍රතිශතයක ඇවරේජ් එකේ එහෙම නැත්නම් සාමාන්‍යයක තිබුණු අවස්ථාවක වුවද ලංකාවේ ආර්ථිකයේ ප්‍රමාණය එහෙම නැත්නම් ආර්ථිකයේ සයිස් එක වෙනස් වෙලා තිබෙන්නේ මෙන්න මේ ආකාරයෙන්. කවදාවත් එය 90 பில்லியன் කියන මාජින් එක රීච් කරලා නැහැ. இலங்கையினுடைய பொருளாதார வளர்ச்சி இந்த போஸ்ட் இண்டிபெண்டன்ட் காலம் என்று சொல்லக்கூடிய சுதந்திரத்துக்கு பின்வந்த காலப்பகுதியிலே 5% இருந்திருக்கிறது என்பது நமக்கு தெரியும். ஆனால் இந்த சதவீத வளர்ச்சியை வைத்துக்கொண்டு நாடுகளை ஒப்பிடுவது பொருத்தமற்றது என்பது நமக்கு தெரியும். ஏனென்றால் அமெரிக்கா போன்ற ஒரு நாட்டினுடைய பொருளாதார வளர்ச்சியை இலங்கையினுடைய பொருளாதார வளர்ச்சியோடு ஒப்பிட்டு பேசுவது பொருத்தமில்லாதது. ஏனென்றால் அமெரிக்காவினுடைய பொருளாதாரத்தினுடைய அளவு ட்ரில்லியன் கணக்கிலே ட்ரில்லியன் டாலர்களிலே வரும். இலங்கையினுடைய பொருளாதாரத்தினுடைய அளவு வரும் 87.96 பில்லியன்களாக இருந்திருக்கிறது அதனுடைய உச்ச காலகட்டத்திலே. ஆகவே இந்த பொருளாதாரத்தினுடைய அளவுகளை பற்றியும் நாங்கள் தெரிந்து வைத்திருப்பது மிக முக்கியமானது. මේ ආර්ථිකයේ ප්‍රසාරණය වීම එහෙම නැත්නම් ආර්ථිකයේ ප්‍රමාණය වෙනස් වීම කෙරෙහි බැලුවොත් 2016න් පසුව ඒ ක්‍රමයෙන් වැඩි වෙලා 2018 වර්ෂයේ තමයි වැඩිපුරම ආර්ථිකයේ සයිස් එක නැත්නම් ආර්ථිකයේ විශාලත්වය වැඩි වෙලා තිබෙන්නේ. ඉන්පසු ආර්ථිකයේ එම ආර්ථිකයේ සයිස් එක එහෙම නැත්නම් ප්‍රමාණය සංකෝචන වෙලා තිබෙනවා. 2020 සිට 2021 දක්වා ආර්ථිකයේ විශාලත්වය වැඩි වෙලා තිබෙනවා කියන එක අපිට හිතා ගන්න බැරි දෙයක්. හේතුව 2020 කොරෝනා පැන්ඩමික් එක හැදුනා. 2021 ආර්ථිකයේ වැඩිවීමක් සිද්ධ වෙලා තිබෙනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ දේශීය ආර්ථික කටයුතු වල යම්කිසි ප්‍රසාරණයක් අපි දකින්නට තියෙනවා. ඒ පමණක් නෙවෙයි විදේශ රටවල් වලින් ප්‍රේෂණ මේ කාල සීමාව තුළ වැඩි වෙලා තිබෙනවා. ආර්ථික කටයුතු වල යම්කිසි දේශීය ආර්ථික කටයුතු වල යම්කිසි ප්‍රසාරණයක් මේ කාල තුළ වැඩි වෙලා තිබෙන එක පේනවා. ඒ වුණාට 2022 තමයි ඒකේ සාමාන්‍යයෙන් අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා ඒ ආර්ථිකයක ප්‍රතිවිපාකයේ සඳහන් වෙන්නේ එහෙම නැත්නම් ඒ ප්‍රතිවිපාකය හරියාකාරව දැක ගන්නට පුළුවන් වෙන්නේ යම්කිසි සංසිද්ධියක් සිදු එම වසරේම නෙවෙයි ඊළඟ වසරේ කියන එක. So එම නිසා 2022 වර්ෂයේදී ඒ සංකෝචන වෙලා තිබෙනවා 73.7 දක්වා. ඒ කියන්නේ 2022 වර්ෂයේ තමයි මේ ආර්ථික සිදුවීම් වල නියමාකාරම ඒ සංකෝචනය පෙන්눔 කරලා තිබෙන්නේ. දැන් 2023 වර්ෂයේ මේ කොමන ආකාරයට මේ සිදුවේද කියන එක අපි තවම අපිට ගමනය කරන්න බෑ. මේ 73.7 කියන එකත් estimate එකක්. So we cannot measure this accurately, but in 2021 it has increased from 80.97 billion to 84.52 billion because of the revival of the local economic activities following corona activities. But the actual burden of the corona activities came in the impact came in 2022 period. The economic activities will be reflected in the following year when there was a kind of a event was unfolding in a particular year. The real impact you can see in the following year. So this is the size. The World Bank basically indicated the contraction of the economy. In 2022, 9.2%, and 2023, they forecasted 4.2% in 2023, and they have revised this up to 3.0% in recent publications. So I will rush through this. I will share this after the presentation. So you can see this is what we have seen in 2022. You can see minus 1.6, and 2022 first second quarter minus 8.4. Third quarter it was 9 some percentage. Fourth quarter data yet to be published. So therefore, the 2022 was a large minus, and the economy has contracted because of the policies implemented by the government in response to the financial crisis, and also the dollar shortages, and the crisis has exaggerated by the international impacts, and also other unfriendly policies implemented by the government. Now, Sri Lankan economy has underwent kind of a negative growth in 2020 and 2022. What our peer countries in the region, how they have been performing. So you can see 2022 performance of our neighboring countries. Maldives, Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan, all have performed with strong positive economic growth. So all these are positive. Maldives, highest growth was reported 8.2% in 2022. Bhutan, one of the smallest countries, 4.5%. South Asia, 6.5% on average. Sri Lanka, minus 8.8%. So it is nothing to do with this international events or corona pandemic or whatever it is. It is something terribly wrong happened in the economy, economic mismanagement. So this is why I usually tell this, or usually refer this particular phenomenon what we are having in Sri Lanka is an acquired one, like HIV/AIDS, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, we call it. But this one is acquired economic crisis. This could have been avoided had the policymakers and politicians reacted to this particular problem on time with proper policies, proper responses. So they waited until the last moment, and even last moment has been passed. And this was the situation where there's no impasse, went into a deadlock. There was no way moving out other than somebody bail out the economy. So this has been the reason why we are having kind of a problem right now. And the World Bank predict that the recovery will happen in 2024-26 period. And the bailout package has been released or unlocked, and this can happen according to the prediction. But the policies that have been being implemented in the country had its own impacts. Now we can see that the recovery period, as predicted by the IMF and the World Bank, assumes that the expected policies will be implemented as it is. And the policies being implemented were, delivering shock waves to the working class, and the shock waves to the business community, and the shock waves to the human capital in the country. So as a result, you can see the human capital is moving out of the country. The government is encouraging their movement moving out, right? None of the countries in the world will encourage their citizens to just move and just migrate and send us money. They will make use of the human capital. Now, not because of the particular pandemic and related economic crisis. Our country is basically encouraging our human capital to move out of the country and send US dollars. which is not a country like Sri Lanka should do. And this particular resource, you cannot build easily, right? So we are basically producing human capital, and we are supplying human capital to other countries without any cost, zero cost. They will get this human capital for no cost, because we are not using them. And this exodus or this migration happening in a larger quantities. 500,000 people have migrated already from the country. Had these 500,000 being in the country, unemployment rate would have been skyrocketed. So at the moment, the migration is happening in a large scale, and skill migration is going to happen, and professionals are migrating, and this is going to have a tremendous impact on the economy, not in the short run, but in the long run. So the time bomb is ticking, and our policymakers, they are not caring of anything, and they are basically saying that we need money, give us money. We need money, give us money. And you can expect the country will develop in 2048. We all will die, and you will develop your own country. At the moment, please pay us your taxes. Right. So, Lankawe ආර්ථිකයේ ප්‍රසාරණය එහෙම නැත්නම් ආර්ථිකයේ performance එක වෘද්ධිය මෑත කාලයේදී ඍණාගයක් ගන්නා බව අපි දන්නවා. මේ ඍණාගයේ වැඩි වෙලා තිබෙනවා මේ පසුගිය වසරේ. පසුගිය වසර තමයි මම හිතන්නේ ඍණාගයේ වැඩිම සංඛ්‍යාවක් report කරපු එහෙම නැත්නම් තිබුණු වසර වූ 2023 ඒ ඍණාගයක් ගන්නා බවට අපි දන්නවා. මේ ඍණාගය සමගම අපි බැලුවොත් එහෙම අනිකුත් රටවල් මේ කලාපයේ තිබෙන අනිකුත් රටවල් බැලුවොත් සාක් රටවල් බැලුවොත් සෑම සාක් රටක්ම ඊටාම හොඳ වර්ධන වේගයක් අත්පත් කරගෙන තිබෙනවා මේ කාල සීමාව තුළ. දකුණු ආසියාව ගත්තොත් සාමාන්‍ය අගයක් ගන්නවා 6.5ක ප්‍රතිශතයක වර්ධන වේගයක් අත්පත් කරගෙන තිබෙනවා. ඍණාගයක් වාර්තා කරපු එකම රට දකුණු ආසියාව තුළ ලංකාව. එය 8.8ක ඍණාගයක් ගන්නවා. මේ හේතුව නිසා මම කියන්නේ මෙම ඍණාගය එහෙම නැත්නම් මේ ආර්ථික සංකෝචනය සිදු වුණේ කොරෝනා වසංගතයේ හේතුවෙන් හෝ එහෙම නැත්නම් ගෝලීය ආර්ථිකයේ ඇති වෙලා තිබෙන සංකෝචනාත්මක බලපෑම් නිසාවත් නොව ලංකාව විසින්ම අත්පත් කරගත් වැරදි ප්‍රතිපත්ති නැත්නම් ප්‍රතිපත්ති ආමුව තුළ විය යුතු වෙනස් වීම් නොකර යම් කිසි සිදුවීමක් සිදු වෙනවා කියලා අනතුරු ඇඟවීම් තිබියදී වුණත් ඒවා කෙරෙහි කිසිම සත පහක වැදගත්කමක් නොදී අවසාන මොහොත දක්වා ඒ අවසාන මොහොතේ පසුවත් මේ කටයුතු ක්‍රියාමාර්ග නොගැනීමේ ප්‍රතිඵලය තමයි අද අපි අත්පත් කරගෙන තිබෙන්නේ. ඉතින් ඒ නිසා අපට සිදු වෙනවා මේ වර්ධන වේගය නැවත වතාවක් ඍණාගයකින් ධනාගය දක්වා ගෙනා ගැනීම සඳහා ඊළඟ 2024 වෙනකම් ඉවසාගෙන සිටීමට. ඒ අතරතුර ආණ්ඩුව රජය දැන් කියනවා අපි වැරදි අපට සල්ලි නැහැ. මේ ප්‍රශ්නෙන් මිදෙන්න නම් ජනතාව අපට සල්ලි දිය යුතුයි. බදු ගෙවිය යුතුයි. ඒ බදු ගෙවීම මෙච්චර ප්‍රමාණයක් අපට සල්ලි අවශ්‍යයි. මෙච්චර ප්‍රමාණයක බදු ගෙවුවොත් තමයි සල්ලි ගන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්නේ. බල ගෙවපල්ලා. එසේ කිරීමෙන් ඇතිවෙන ප්‍රතිපාක ගැන කිසිම ස්ටඩි එකක් කරලා එහෙම නැත්නම් අධ්‍යයනයක් කරලා මේ කරන්න පුළුවන්ද මේ හේතුව නිසා ඇතිවෙන අතුරු ප්‍රතිපාක ගැන කිසිම පරිශ්‍රණයකින් එහෙම නැත්නම් විභාග කිරීමකින් තොරව මේ බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා මේක ලබා ගන්න පුළුවන් කියලා. ඒක ඒ ප්‍රතිපත්තිය හරියයිද නැද්ද කියන එක අපි වෙන පැත්තක තියලා බැලුවොත් අපි 2048 වෙනකම් බලාගෙන ඉන්න ඕනේ මේ රට සංවර්ධිත රටක් හැටියට පත් වෙන්න. ඒ කියන්නේ අවුරුදු 100ක් වෙනකම් බලාගෙන ඉන්න ඕනේ. අපේ බොහෝ දෙනෙක් මේ අද සම්බන්ධ වෙලා ඉන්න බොහෝ දෙනෙක් එතකොට මැරලා යාවි. ඊළඟ පරම්පරාව මේ මතකයේ තියාගෙන ඒ කාලේ වැඩ කරයිද එහෙම නැත්නම් රට ඇතලා යයිද කියන එක ඔබ සතුව තිබෙන කාරණයක්. නමුත් ලංකාව
දැනට ලංකාව සතු මානව ප්‍රාග්ධනය විකුණමින් මේ ප්‍රශ්නෙට විසඳුම් හොයන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන රටක් හැටියට තමයි වාර්තා වෙලා තිබෙන්නේ. ඉදිරියේදී මේ මානව ප්‍රාග්ධනය ලංකාවෙන් පිටවීම නිසා ලංකාවේ ආර්ථිකයට ඉතාමත් දැඩි බලපෑම් ඇති වෙන්නට පුළුවන්. ඇයි මේ වගේ තත්යකට අපිට මුහුණ දෙන්න සිදු වුනේ? A restrictive trade regime. මේ කියන්නේ ලෝක බැංකුවේ. Restrictive trade regime. ඒ කියන්නේ අපනයනය කිරීමට අවශ්‍ය රටක් ආනයනය කිරීමටත් ඉඩ දිය යුතුයි. මොකද ලංකාවෙන් රටක ආනයනය නැතුව අපනයනය කිරීමට හැකියාවක් නැහැ. එතකොට trade regime එක නැත්නම් වෙළඳ ජාත්‍යන්තර වෙළඳාම ඉතාමත් පිළිහිල් විදියට මේක කරන්නට ඕනේ. නමුත් විදේශ විනිමය ප්‍රශ්නයක් නිසා ඒ සිදු කිරීමට ලංකාවට සිද්ධ වුණා. ඒ නිසාම ආර්ථිකයේ ප්‍රසාරණ වේගයත් අඩු වුණා. මොකද ජාත්‍යන්තර වෙළඳාම මත අපි තාමත් රැඳිලා ඉන්න රටක් නිසා. big investment climate. ඒ කියන්නේ ලංකාව තුළට විදේශ විනිමය ගෙන්වා ගැනීමේ මූලාශ්‍ර වලින් එකක් තමයි විදේශ ආයෝජන ගෙන්වා ගැනීම. විදේශ ආයෝජන ගෙන්වා ගැනීම සඳහා අවශ්‍ය කරන පසුබිමක් ලංකාව තුළ නිර්මාණය වුණේ නැහැ. විශේෂයෙන් කිව්වොත් ලංකාවේ යුද්ධයෙන් පසු 2009 යුද්ධය ඉවරනාට පස්සේ බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන 2010 වන විට බිලියන 1ක් ඇමරිකානු ඩොලර් බිලියන 1ක් විදේශ ආයෝජන ගෙන්වා ගැනීමට බලාපොරොත්තු වුණා. 2011 දී බිලියන 2යි 2012 දී බිලියන 3යි. ආණ්ඩුවේ ප්‍රතිපත්ති ප්‍රකාශනයේ ඒ කාලේ තිබුණා. නමුත් බිලියන 2 දක්වාවත් මේ විදේශ ආයෝජනය වැඩි කර ගැනීමට තාම අපි සමත් වෙලා නැහැ. ඒකට හේතුව ලංකාව තුළ ආයෝජනයට සුදුසු වාතාවරණයක් එහෙම නැත්නම් ඉන්වෙස්ට්මන්ට් ක්ලයිමේට් එකක් නැහැ. ඒක බරපතල ප්‍රශ්නයක් ලංකාවේ මේ වගේ ක්‍රයිසිස් එකක් ඇති වෙන්න හේතු වීමට. එපිසෝඩ් of loose monetary policy. සමහර විට මේක ඔබ දකින්න නැති සාමාන්‍යයෙන් ඒවා අපි අත්විඳලා තිබෙනවා. මේ මෑත කාලයේදී 2018න් පසුව ඊටාම ලිහිල් මූල්‍ය ප්‍රතිපත්තියක් තමයි ආණ්ඩුව විසින් අනුගමනය කළේ. ඒ ලිහිල් මූල්‍ය ප්‍රතිපත්තිය නිසා වැඩිපුර ආර්ථිකීය ප්‍රසාරණ වෙයි කියන බලාපොරොත්තුවෙන් තමයි ඒගොල්ලෝ ඒක කරේ. නමුත් ලංකාවේ ලිහිල් මූලික ප්‍රතිපත්තියක් කියලා කියන්නේ අපි දන්නවා ඉන්ට්‍රස්ට් රේට් එක අඩු කිරීම, ඒ වගේම මූල්‍ය ප්‍රසාරණයක් සිදු වෙනවා. ආයෝජනය සඳහා අවශ්‍ය වෙන මුදල් ලබා ගැනීම සුලභ වෙනවා. ඒ නිසා ආයෝජන වැඩි වෙනවා කියන එක. ඒ ආයෝජන වැඩි වීම තුළින් ආර්ථික ප්‍රසාරණයක් වෙනවා. ඒ ආර්ථික ප්‍රසාරණය රටට හිතකර බලපෑම් ඇති කරනවා කියන එක තමයි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ. නමුත් මේ ලිහිල් මූල්‍ය ප්‍රතිපත්තිය නිසා සිදු වුණේ ණය ගැනීම සිදු වුණා. නමුත් ණය ගැනීම සිදු වුණේ ආයෝජන සඳහා නෙවෙයි. ඒ වෙනුවට සාමාන්‍යයෙන් අපි බලන්නේ මුදල් සාමාන්‍ය පුද්ගලයෝ ලංකාවේ බැංකුවකින් ණය ගන්නේ එක්කෝ ගෙයක් හදන්න, එහෙම නැත්නම් වාහනයක් ගන්න. වැඩිපුරම සිද්ධ වෙන්නේ ඕක නිසා. දැන් ඒ නිසා ඒ ලිහිල් මූල්‍ය ප්‍රතිපත්තිය නිසා බලාපොරොත්තු වුණ ඒ ඉලක්කය කරා ළඟා කරගැනීමට හැකියාවක් තිබුණේ නැහැ. ඒ සඳහා අවකාශයක් එතන නැහැ. ඒ වගේම විදේශ විනිමය දිගු කාලයක් ස්ථාවර පවත්වා ගැනීමට ආණ්ඩුව උත්සාහ කිරීම නිසා එකවරම ඒ විදේශ විනිමය පාලනය කරමින් තිබූ විදේශ විනිමය එක දවසකින් පාලනයෙන් තොරව උදාහැරීම නිසා ලොකු විශාල ආందోලනාත්මක විදිහට එය උච්චාවනය වීමට පටන් ගත්තා. ඒක ෂොක් වේව් එකක් හැටියට ආර්ථිකයේ සෑම අංශයේම බලපෑමක් ඇති කරන්නට සිද්ධ වුණා. ඒ හේතුව නිසා internal external imbalances වැඩි වුණා. ඒ කියන්නේ සමතුලිතතාවයකින් තොරව එය ආර්ථිකයේ බැලන්ස් දෙකක් තියෙනවානේ. internal balance කියලා බජට් බැලන්ස් එක සහ balance of payment එකේ balance එක ওই දෙකම මේ ප්‍රතිපත්ති නිසා ඉතාමත් දැඩි ලෙස උච්චාවචන වලට පාත්‍ර වුණා. එය ආර්ථිකයට අහිතකර ලෙස බලපෑවා. high physical deficit ආණ්ඩුවේ වේදම් වැඩි වුණා. ආදායම අඩු වුණා. බදු අඩු කිරීම නිසා. ඒ බදු අඩු කිරීම නිසා ඇති වූ ප්‍රතිඵල ගැන අද කතිකාවක් තිබෙනවා. සමාජය තුළ ඒ පිළිබඳව මෙතෙන්දී අපිට කතා කිරීමට අවකාශයක් නැහැ. නමුත් ඒ ෆිස්කල් ඩෙෆිසිට් වැඩිවීමට එක හේතුවක් තමයි ඒ ඇඩ්හොක් විදිහට මුල්‍ය ප්‍රතිපත්තිය සහ ෆිස්කල් ප්‍රතිපත්තිය හැසිරීම. තව තිබෙනවා ෆැක්ටර්ස් කීපයක් ඩිස්කස් කරන්නට. නමුත් මම ඒවා එකිනෙකට කියවන්න යන්නේ නැහැ. මුල්‍ය කියන්නේ සාමාන්‍යයෙන් ඩවුන් ඉකොනොමික් රේටිං ඒජන්සිස් කියලා කියන්නේ සාමාන්‍යයෙන් ආණ්ඩුවක් එහෙම නැත්නම් රජයක් මුල්‍ය වශයෙන් කොච්චර ස්ථාවරව පවතිනවාද යන්න බලන්න මුල්‍ය ග්‍රේඩිං ඒජන්සිස් ඒවා ග්‍රේඩිං ටික නිකුත් කරනවා. එතකොට ඒව අනුව තමයි විදේශ වෙළඳපොලෙන් අපිට ණය ගන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්නේ. ආණ්ඩුවක් හැටියට ණය ගන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්නේ ඒ විදිහට. එතකොට දිගටම එම රේටිං ඒජන්සිස් කිව්වා ලංකාවේ ආර්ථිකය ණය ආපොස්තු ගෙවීමේ හැකියාව දුර්වල වෙනවා කියන එක හැම විටම ඒ රේටිං ඒජන්සිස් කිව්වා. පුනා කිව්වා. එතකොට ඒ හැම අවස්ථාවකම මහා බැංකුව විසින් කරේ එහෙම එකක් නැහැ. අපිට ඩොලර් ඕන තරම් තිබෙනවා. සංචිතවල ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැහැ. මේ ඒජන්සිස් මේ රේටිං ඒජන්සිස් ලංකාව කෙරෙහි තිබෙන ඕනෑම කියන්නේ ලංකාව කෙරෙහි තිබෙන ක්‍රෝධය නිසා එක කරනවා කියන එක ඒ හැම අවස්ථාවකම මහා බැංකුව ඒ කාලේදී කිව්වා. එතකොට දැන් ඒක සැබෑ බවට පත් වෙලා ණය ආපෝ ගෙවීම කරගන්න බැරුව බැංක්‍රප්සි එක එහෙම නැත්නම් බංගලොත්භාවය ලංකාව විසින්ම ජාත්‍යන්තර ප්‍රජාවට කියන්නට සිද්ධ වුණා. ඉතින් මේ හේතු නිසා තමයි ඇත්ත වශයෙන්ම ලංකාවේ ආර්ථිකය මේ වගේ තත්යකට මේ පත් වෙන්න සිද්ධ වුණේ. ඒ ඇයි එහෙම වුණේ කියන එක ගැන දැන් ආවර්ජනය කිරීමට සෝ ඒවට හේතු සාධක පිළිබඳව නැවත ස්වයං විමර්ශනය කිරීමට හෝ අද කවුරුත් සූදානම් නැහැ. වෙච්ච දේ වුණා. past is past. ඒ පහුගිය ගිය කාලවල සිද්ධ වෙච්ච ගැන කතා කරන්න එපා. දැන් මෙච්චරක් අවශ්‍යයි අපිට. දැන් IMF එක සමග වැඩ කරන්න ඕනේ. ඒ නිසා අපි මේ ප්‍රතිපත්තිය අනුගමනය කරනවා කියන එක පමණයි වෙන්නේ. මොකද්ද උනේ? කාගෙන්ද වැරදි සිදු උනේ? ඒ මුදල් නාස්ති වුණා නම් ඒක කොහොමද නාස්ති උනේ? ඒවා ආපහු ගන්න පුළුවන්ද? ඒවට පිළිබඳව කතිකාවක් යන පාටක්. In the recent past, the trade regime was extremely weakened and the investment climate was not very conducive for bringing more investment in the country. And the monetary policy was very much, loose monetary policy or expansion in monetary policy. But the expansion in monetary policy did not provide room for expansion of investment in the country, leading to high economic growth because of the other bottlenecks. And the government was basically keeping an exchange rate, though the government subscribed to open economic, the flexible exchange rate regime since 2000, but it has been controlled by the central bank directly and indirectly, and the central bank all of a sudden removed its control and the exchange rate violently moved or fluctuated violently, creating shock waves throughout the economy. So that created many shock waves in the economy, high fiscal deficits, large gross financing needs, and a rapid growth unsustainable debt. So these three reasons put the economy on the destructive path. இந்த பொருளாதார பிரச்சனைக்குரிய அடிப்படை காரணங்களாக சிலவற்றை நாங்கள் அடையாளம் காணலாம். ஒன்று, இலங்கையினுடைய வர்த்தகத்துறை ஒரு திறந்த பொருளாதார நிலைமையிலிருந்து ஒரு மூடப்பட்ட ஒரு பொருளாதாரத்துக்காக ஒரு மூடப்பட்ட வர்த்தகமாக மாறியது. அதே போல இலங்கையினுடைய வெளிநாட்டிலிருந்து வருகின்ற மூலதனத்தை கவர்வதற்குரிய வாய்ப்புகள் இலங்கையிலே பெரிதாக இருக்கவில்லை. அதே போல இலங்கையினுடைய பணக்கொள்கையானது மிகுந்த ஒரு விரிவாக்க பணக்கொள்கையாக இருந்த ஒரு காரணம். அந்த விரிவாக்க பணக்கொள்கையின் காரணமாக முதலீடுகள் அதிகரிக்கும் என்று எதிர்பார்க்கப்பட்டாலும் கூட அந்த முதலீட்டு விரிவாக்கத்தை அடைய முடியாமல் போனது ஏனைய போத்தல் கழுத்துக்கள் இருக்கின்றபடியினாலே. இலங்கையிலே முதலீட்டை கவரக்கூடிய ஏனைய விடயங்கள் அங்கே கிடையாது என்றபடியினால் நீங்கள் விரிவாக்க பணக்கொள்கையை கையாண்டாலும் முதலீடுகள் அதிகரிப்பதற்குரிய வாய்ப்புகள் இல்லை. அவ்வாறு முதலீட்டிற்கான நிதியினுடைய செலவு குறைகின்ற போது மக்கள் பணத்தை வங்கியிலிருந்து கடன் பெறுவார்கள். அவற்றை ஒன்றில் வீடுகளை அமைப்பதற்காக பயன்படுத்துவார்கள் அல்லது வாகனங்களை கொள்வனவு செய்வதற்காக பயன்படுத்துவார்கள். ஆகவே எதிர்பார்க்கப்பட்டது போல ஒரு பொருளாதார வளர்ச்சியை அடைய முடியாது போயிருக்கிறது. அதே போல தொடர்ச்சியாக இலங்கை நாணய மாற்று வீதத்தை தன்னுடைய கட்டுப்பாட்டின்களே வைத்திருந்து விட்டு ஒரே அடியாக அதனை தன்னுடைய கட்டுப்பாட்டிலிருந்து விட்டதன் காரணமாக நாணய மாற்று வீதம் பாரிய ஏற்ற இறக்கங்களுக்கு உட்பட்டது. அந்த பாரிய ஏற்ற இறக்கங்கள் காரணமாக நாட்டினுடைய பொருளாதாரத்திலே எல்லா இடங்களிலும் அல்லது எல்லா பகுதிகளுக்கும் ஒரு அதிர்ச்சி அலை பரவி சென்றதை நாங்கள் காணக்கூடியதாக இருக்கிறது. ஆகவே இலங்கையை பொறுத்த மட்டிலே இந்த நிலைக்கு காரணமாக அமைந்தது இலங்கையினுடைய மிகப்பெரிய ஒரு வரவு செலவு திட்ட பற்றாக்குறை. இரண்டாவது, அந்த வரவு செலவு திட்ட பற்றாக்குறையை நிதியீட்டம் செய்வதற்கு அவசியமான கடன்களை அதிகளவு பெற்றமை. மூன்றாவது, இலங்கையினுடைய கடன்கள் மீளச் செலுத்தக்கூடிய அளவுக்கு இல்லாமல் அவற்றை தொடர்ந்து வாங்கி குவித்தபடியால் அந்த வாங்கி குவித்த அந்த கடன்களிலிருந்து வெளிநாட்டு செலாவணியை பெற்றுக்கொள்ளக்கூடிய விவரங்கள் அல்லது அதற்குரிய நிகழ்ச்சி திட்டங்கள் இல்லாத காரணத்தினால் இவ்வாறான ஒரு பரிதாபகரமான நிலைக்கு இலங்கையினுடைய பொருளாதாரம் இன்று வந்திருக்கிறது. ஆகவே இந்த நிலைமைகளை அடிப்படையாக வைத்துக்கொண்டு பார்க்கின்ற போது இலங்கையில் ஏற்பட்ட இந்த பொருளாதார பிரச்சனையானது ஒரு மனிதாபிமான பிரச்சனையாக மாறி இருக்கிறது என்பது பலருடைய அபிப்பிராயமாக இருக்கிறது. The current economic political crisis in Sri Lanka, it had created economic crisis, but it will now being expanded to a political crisis and also an humanitarian emergency. According to the Human Rights Watch, the economic turmoil and economic crisis did not confine into an economic crisis, but it had came out as a fully blown political crisis. And economic turmoil, economic crisis plus political instability will lead to an humanitarian emergency situation. And it happened in Sri Lanka because we know that the people are basically leading a miserable life nowadays, and poverty level have increased, and the people's nutritional the intakes, food came down drastically, and the children are malnourished, and medical support, medical equipments, medicines are in serious shortage, and the medical sector has been constrained by financial needs. These are, you can leisurely we will be able to go, because I have a presentation which can go into 77 or 80 slides. And who was responsible for higher debt? We have to just make a visual presentation here, and it has been published by Daily Mirror. So I'm taking this and reproducing here. We can see that the loans, external debt positions since 1979 to 2021 period, 20 period. So during this period, you can see the external debt has increased since 2005 onwards. So therefore, even though the governments have taken loans and external debt positions were there, but this external debt increased alarmingly after Mahinda Rajapaksa regime. So therefore, we know, we can identify who were responsible for this external debt, who are responsible for this fallout, are clearly visible from this graph. And you can see during this the internal interim period between 2015 to 2019 period, you can see there is a sharp increase here. So not only Mahinda Rajapaksa period, but also Maithripala period also, we can see here a surge in external debt. So thereafter, they are taking debt in order to repay the debt, and the debt spiral has skyrocketing this point onwards. So we cannot say that the economic turmoil of today was articulated since independence. So every former rulers were responsible. Until you can see 1995, the debt rates were, the external debts were moderate, not much, less than 10 billion US dollars. But it has increased up to 60 billion from 10 billion to 60 billion since 2005 onwards. So people looking at this particular graph will have their own explanation about why these loans have been taken and how this has been invested, where these loans have been invested, and what is the return on this investment, and why we could not repay these loans from those investments. So an impartial discussion should happen. And now debt had been taken, debtors are there, projects are completed, and no income generated from those projects. Now, who has been responsible? And now we are a bankrupt nation, and from escape from this bankruptcy, or just stand up from bankruptcy, the government is asking everyone should support and everyone should bear the cost. Fine, everyone should bear the cost, no question about it. The taxpayer will support the country because the country is important. Fine, but whomever make decisions, right? If you keep a blind eye on the politician making the decision, let them make the decision and we'll keep quiet. If they goes wrong, ultimately you and me have to pay this. And the younger generation listen to this particular the conversation. You have to pay. You have to pay. So problem here is accountability. Accountability is seriously questioned. It is the politicians, they are taking offices by popular votes, and they are responsible. Accountability should be there. Whatever they have done and whatever they have not done, they cannot escape. And saying that past is past, now we have to build this country. It is not the right way. So this particular regime or particular political culture has to be changed. The youth has aspirations. The younger generation, they have aspirations. Now, can we change this? The political culture, can we change this? We have serious problem in this. Imagine that this particular government is dissolved and we are going for another election. How people will vote? People will say, okay, we want to vote good people. But political parties should give the nomination to the good people. And I'm sure, even if you dissolve the government now and call for a general election right now, in the next list, and most of these faces will reappear as candidates. There is no question about it, right? So the people, as voters, people don't have an option. The same faces will reappear with an ugly smile. So the people have to vote for them because there is no other option. So the parties, they select the candidates based on their whims and fancies. I'm not blaming a single party. All the parties are like that. The major parties are like that. And if an individual, as a candidate, it's not easy, even though the nomination fees is very much, simple, not very much, but campaign fee and other expenditures are extremely high. Could not bear by an ordinary individual. And this is the reason why this culture could not be changed. So if this has to be changed, there should be some kind of a broader discussion among the people, broader discussion among the youth, younger generation. මේ graph එක බැලුවොත් අපට පේනවා ලංකාවේ විදේශ ණය 1980 සිට 2020 දක්වා ප්‍රසාරණය වූ හැටි මේ graph එකෙන් පෙන්නනවා. එතෙන්දී 2005 දක්වා අපේ ණය ඩොලර් බිලියන 10 ඉක්මවලා නැහැ. නමුත් 2005න් පසුව 2020 වන විට ඩොලර් බිලියන 60 දක්වා එය ප්‍රසාරණය වෙලා තිබෙනවා. එතකොට ණය වැඩිම අරගෙන තිබෙන්නේ 2005න් පසුව. 2005න් පසුව කියලා කියන්නේ ඒ 2005න් පසුව ආණ්ඩු කරපු හැම පක්ෂයක්ම මේකට වග කිව යුතුයි. මහින්ද රාජපක්ෂ මහත්මයාගේ ඒ පක්ෂයත් ඒ වගේ මෛත්‍රීපාල සිරිසේන මහත්මයාගේ පක්ෂයත් ඉන් පසුව ආපු දේශපාලනඥයෝ මේකට ඍජුව වගකිව යුතුයි. ණය ගැනීම වැරදි කියලා කියන්නේ නැහැ. නමුත් ඒ ණය හරියාකාරව ජාතියේ ධන උත්පාදනය සඳහා ප්‍රමාණ විදියට එහෙම නැත්නම් ක්‍රමානුකූලව ඒ යොදවා ගැනීමට අවශ්‍ය වෙනවා. ණය ගන්නවා කියලා කියන්නේ එහෙම නැත්නම් ජනතාව පත් කරන්නේ දේශපාලකයන් Tamanට සේවය කිරීමට සහ ඒ වගවීමටයි ජනතාව විසින් පත් කරන්නේ. නමුත් එහෙම වගවීමක් සහ එහෙම වගකීමක් කිසිම දේශපාලකයෙක් විසින් අද දක්වා සිදු වෙලා නැති බව ඔබ මම දන්නවා. නමුත් මේ දේශපාලන සංස්කෘතිය වෙනස් කරන්න පුළුවන්. අපි හිතමු අපි හොඳ වැඩ කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ වගේම සිංගප්පූරුවේ වගේ හෝ එහෙම නැත්නම් කැනඩාවේ වගේ එහෙම නැත්නම් නවසීලන්තයේ වගේ ඊටාම තරුණ දේශපාලනඥයන්ට ඉඩ දෙමු. ඔවුන්ව අපි පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට යවමු. ඔවුන් විසින් මේ රට ගොඩනැගීමට මේ වැදගත් රාජකාරියක් කරමු කියලා අපි බැලුවොත් එය සිදු වෙන්න තිබෙන අවකාශ ඊටාම අල්පයි. අද ඉලෙක්ෂන් එක අපි කෝල් කරොත් එහෙම නැත්නම් අද මැතිවරණයක් අපි කෝල් කරොත් පාර්ලිමේන්තු මැතිවරණයක් මේ අද ඉන්න එම දේශපාලන කණ්ඩායමම එම මැතිවරණවලත් ඔවුන්ට නාම යෝජනා ලබා දෙනවා කියන එක කතා දෙකක් නැහැ. එනිසා මේ පොලිටිකල් කල්චර් එක නැත්නම් දේශපාලන සංස්කෘතිය වෙනස් කිරීම සිදු කරන්න ඕනේ කොහොමද කියන එක තමයි ඊටාම වැදගත්ම ප්‍රශ්නාර්ථයක් වෙන්නේ. இலங்கையினுடைய மொத்த கடன் வெளிநாட்டு கடன் எவ்வாறு மாறி இருக்கிறது என்பது சம்பந்தமாக இந்த வரைவை பார்த்து நாங்கள் தெரிந்து கொள்ளக்கூடியதாக இருக்கும். இந்த வரைவை பார்க்கின்ற போது 2005ஆம் ஆண்டு வரையிலே இலங்கையினுடைய வெளிநாட்டு கடன்கள் பெரிதாக அதிகரித்ததாக நாங்கள் சொல்ல முடியாது. 2005ஆம் ஆண்டுக்கு பிறகுதான் இந்த கடன்கள் மிக பாரிய அளவிலே அதிகரித்திருக்கின்றன. ஆக 2005ஆம் ஆண்டுக்கு பின்னர் வந்த அரசாங்கங்களே இதற்கு பாரிய அளவிலே பொறுப்பு கூற வேண்டியவர்களாக இருக்கிறார்கள். அதிலே மஹிந்த ராஜபக்ச அவருக்கு பின்னர் வந்த மைத்ரிபால சிறிசேன போன்றவர்களும் இந்த கடன் சுமைக்கு நேரடியாக பொறுப்பு கூற வேண்டியவர்களாக இருக்கிறார்கள். ஒரு தலைவரை நாட்டினுடைய தலைவரை மக்கள் தெரிவு செய்கின்ற போது அவர் பொறுப்பு கூறுவாராக இருப்பார் என்ற அடிப்படையில் தான் தெரிவு செய்கின்றார்கள். ஆனால் இலங்கையிலே பொறுப்பு கூறுவது என்பது அவ்வாறு நிகழ்ந்ததாக வரலாறு இல்லை. இந்த பொருளாதார கலாச்சாரத்திலிருந்து எவ்வாறு நாங்கள் மீண்டு வரலாம் என்று பார்த்தால் புதியவர்களை இளைஞர்களை நியூசிலாந்திலே உள்ளது போல அல்லது கனடாவிலே உள்ளது போல அல்லது சிங்கப்பூரிலே உள்ளது போல படித்தவர்களை தொழில் வல்லுநர்களை இளைஞர்களை இதில் இணைத்துக் கொள்ளலாம் என்று பார்த்தால் இப்போது இருக்கின்ற அரசியல் கலாச்சாரம் அதற்கு இடம் கொடுப்பதாக இருக்குமா என்ற சந்தேகம் எழுகின்றது. குறிப்பாக பிரதான கட்சிகளை எடுத்துக்கொள்வோமாக இருந்தால் இப்போது ஒரு பொது தேர்தல் அறிவிக்கப்பட்டாலும் கூட இப்போது இருக்கின்ற அதே பழைய முகங்கள் அதே தாத்தாக்கள் தான் இப்போதும் இனியும் அந்த கட்சியினுடைய வேட்பாளர் பட்டியலிலே வரப்போகின்றார்கள். ஆகவே இந்த கலாச்சாரத்தை எப்படி மாற்றி அமைப்பது என்பது ஒரு பெரிய பிரச்சனையாக இருக்கிறது. இப்போது இந்த பிரச்சனையிலே அரசியல்வாதிகளை தெரிவு செய்துவிட்டு அவர்களே கண்ட பாட்டியை தங்களுடைய பாட்டிலே ஆட்சி செய்ய விட்டுவிடுவதாக இருந்தால் அதனுடைய பிழைகள் ஏற்படுகின்ற போது அதனுடைய சுமையையும் நாங்களே எதிர்காலத்தில் சுமக்க வேண்டியிருக்கும். இப்போது மற்றவர்கள் விட்ட பிழைக்காக மற்றவர்கள் செய்த பாவத்துக்காக நாங்கள் ஒவ்வொருவரும் வரி செலுத்திக் கொண்டிருக்கிறோம் என்பது நமக்கு தெரியும். ஆகவே இந்த நிலைமை மாறுவதற்கான ஒரு நிலைமை ஏற்படக்கூடிய வாய்ப்புகள் இருக்கிறதா என்பதை பற்றி சிந்தியுங்கள். இளைஞர்கள் என்ற அடிப்படையிலே இதை பற்றி சிந்திக்க வேண்டிய காலம் இது. I think that is more than adequate and I think I have discussed from a Sri Lankan economy and the Sri Lankan economy's problems from a historical perspective and we have a deadlock now and how to overcome this deadlock is a serious question. I didn't discuss how we can get out from this deadlock, but we will be able to see this happening recurring this kind of an economic activity, economic problems, and some serious discussion has to be done how to overcome this type of a recurrence in future. In the future generation has to take a note on this. Thank you so much for listening. I think now we are, I think it's too long. Thank you so much for your patience.
right. Nandri Ganesh, thank you. Stuti, ප්‍රශ්න කීපයක් ඇවිල්ලා තියෙනවා Zoom වලින්.
ඔව්.
හැබැයි අපි ඔබගේ සාකච්ඡාව තුළ මේ විසඳුම් සෙවීමේ සාකච්ඡාවක් නෙවෙන නිසා අපි මේකෙදි අද උත්සාහ කරන්නේ ඓතිහාසික මේක මේ ප්‍රොබ්ලම් එක ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ ඩෙවලොප්මන්ට් ඉෂුව එක විකාශය පිළිබඳවනේ සාකච්ඡා කරන්නේ. So ඒකින්ද ඒ පිළිබඳව තියෙන ප්‍රශ්න මම එවයිට් කරනවා. ඒ ප්‍රශ්නය අවොයිඩ් කළොත් එහෙම අපිට තියෙන්නේ ඒ කවුද හිටපු අංශාධිපතිතුමා යොමු කරලා තියෙන ප්‍රශ්නයක් විසාරේ රත්න අදහසක් වශයෙන් කියන්නේ this Kalusudda people educated enough to do the politics in Sri Lanka, nothing happened positive to the country. So this is what he has mentioned. And now student Dhammika Herat has said that we usually call it exploitation of our resources during the colonial era. They have developed the physical infrastructure. If they use that export money to import goods and services, then should we still call it as exploitation of our resources? I think that section you can take on.
Yes, this is the question normally everyone, right? It's a common question asked by many people, not in Sri Lanka, but in India and other colonies also. They have exploited us. Colonialism is exploitation. There's no question about it. But what I'm saying is, during the colonization, exploitation has happened. Obviously, it happened. And the economy has been transformed as a dependent economy, exporting few items and importing everything from foreign countries. So this has been the role model, right, of colonialism. But the problem here is we had some good things also, some advantages also. So we will say that the Suddha or the colonizers are bad and they have exploited us. Fine. But after independence, what did we do? That is the question what I'm focusing on. So we know that they were exploiting us, and then they were not doing anything, and their ideology is not good. Then, as an independent nation, with this much of resources and also startup benefits or startup advantages, with a highly educated people, right? With fairly healthy, and if you are educated and healthy, you should be able to think. Since independent, our locals, how did they think? So don't all the time blame the Suddhas, because Suddhas, their policy is the exploitation. There is no question about it. I fully agree with you. But after Suddhas, this many 75 years, what did we do? That is my question. So we have to self-criticize ourselves. And we made the mistake. And we are responsible for our present standoff.
Thank you. There is another feedback from Mr. Ekanayaka. Thank you, sir. As I think no matter which party comes to power, there should be policies that do not change. And also there should be transparency in all activities. So that is feedback. Now we are giving our microphones to students who gathered here today. They will raise few questions, and we hope you will either answer in Sinhala and Tamil or English, whatever you're comfortable. Yeah, you are comfortable. Thank you.
Sir, வந்து ஓபன் எக்கனாமிக்கும் ஓபன் எக்கனாமிக் வித் ஹியூமன் ஃபேஸ் இதுதான் ரெண்டுக்கும் இடையில என்ன டிஃபரன்ஸ்?
திறந்த பொருளாதாரம் என்று சொல்றது பொருளாதாரத்தை திறந்து விட்டு ஏற்றுமதி இறக்குமதி வெளிநாட்டு வர்த்தகம் வெளிநாட்டு முதலீடு போன்றவற்றுக்கு இடமளிக்கின்ற ஒரு கொள்கையை தான் நாங்கள் திறந்த பொருளாதாரம் என்று சொல்றோம், ஓப்பன் எக்கானமி என்று சொல்றோம். சரிதானே? அப்ப திறந்த பொருளாதாரத்தை நாங்கள் கைக்கொள்ளுகின்ற போது சிலருக்கு சில தொழில்கள் வந்து உள்நாட்டிலே மேற்கொள்ள முடியாததாக இருக்கும். குறிப்பாக ஏற்றுமதி சார்ந்த கைத்தொழில்களுக்கு நல்ல வரவேற்பு இருக்கக்கூடும். ஆனால் உள்நாட்டில் இருக்கக்கூடிய முக்கியமான கைத்தொழில்களிலே மற்றும் ஏனைய துறையிலே ஈடுபடுவர்களுக்கான வருமானங்கள் வீழ்ச்சி அடையும். சுருக்கமாக சொல்ல போனால் உங்கள் பொருளாதாரத்தை திறந்து விடுகிற போது சில தொழில்கள் விரிவாக்கம் அடையும், சில தொழில்கள் சுருங்கும் அல்லது அவை தொடர முடியாத நிலைக்கு வரும். ஆகவே இந்த திறந்த பொருளாதார கொள்கையை அமல்படுத்துகின்ற போது சமூகத்திலேயே ஒரு சாரார் பாதிக்கப்படுவார். அந்த விளிம்பு நிலையில் இருக்கின்ற மக்களுடைய வாழ்க்கையிலே ஒரு பாரிய முன்னேற்றத்தை நீங்கள் காண முடியாது. அதாவது வறிய மக்களுடைய வாழ்க்கையிலே ஒரு பெரிய முன்னேற்றத்தை நீங்கள் காண முடியாது. ஆகவே அந்த வறியவர்கள் தொடர்ந்தும் வறியவர்களாக இருக்கக்கூடிய ஒரு நிலைமை, ஒரு ஆபத்து அங்கே இருக்கிறது. ஆகவே இந்த விஷயத்தை அடையாளம் கொண்டு இவ்வாறு இந்த திறந்த பொருளாதார கொள்கையை அமல்படுத்துகின்ற போது அதனால் பாதிக்கப்படக்கூடிய வறிய மக்களுக்கு உதவுகின்ற கொள்கைகளையும் சமூக நலன்புரி கொள்கைகளையும் உள்ளடக்கிய ஒரு பொருளாதார கொள்கையைத்தான் நாங்கள் இந்த ஓப்பன் எக்கானமி வித் ஹியூமன் ஃபேஸ் என்ற அடிப்படையிலே பார்க்கின்றோம். அதுதான் நாங்கள் அறிந்த வரையிலே அதற்கான ஒரு வரைவிலக்கணமாக சொல்ல முடியும்.
සර් මේ දැන් ලංකාවේ මේ ආර්ථික අර්බුදයත් එක්ක සර් මේ ආදායම වැඩි කරගන්න අපිට තියෙන එක පිළිමයක් විදිහට විදේශ ආයෝජන ලංකාවට ගෙනා ගන්න ඕනේ. ඉතින් කොහොමද දැන් අපි අර්බුදකාරී සංගঠনයක මේ විදේශ ආයෝජන කරන්නේ? දැන් අද Facebook එකේ දාලා තිබුණා මේ මිත්සුබිෂි සමගම ලංකාවෙන් ඉවත් වෙනවා කියලා ලබන මාසෙ ඉඳලා. ඉතින් ඒ වගේ තියෙන ඉස්සරහට තමයි කොහොමද අර්බුදය වැඩි වෙන්නේ? ඒ කොහොමද අපි විදේශ ආයෝජන වැඩි කරගන්නේ? මොනවද ප්‍රතිපත්ති වගේ තීරණ ගන්න ඕනද කියන්නේ? පොඩ්ඩක් කියන්න.
ඔබගේ ප්‍රශ්නෙට මම ඍජුව උත්තරයක් දෙනවා නම් දැන් වෙන්නේ මේකයි. ආයෝජකයන් එන්න පුළුවන්, මිත්සුබිසි හෝ වෙනම කම්පැනියක් එන්න පුළුවන්. ආපුවාම වෙන්නේ අදාළ අමාත්‍යවරයා සමග සාකච්ඡාවක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒ සාකච්ඡාව හොඳට යයි. හොඳ ආකාරව ඒ සාකච්ඡාවේ අපි මේක දෙන්නම් අරක දෙන්නම් අර මේක කරන්න පුළුවන් කියලා යයි. සාකච්ඡාවේ අන්තිමේට කතාවක් එයි. එතකොට අනිත් ඒවා කොහොමද? මේ අනිත් ඒවා කොහොමද කියන එක තමයි වැඩිපුරම මේ විදේශ ආයෝජන ලංකාවට නොපැමිණීමට හේතුව. ඒක ඕපන්ලි අහනවා සමහර අය. මම එක පුද්ගලයෙක් එහෙම නැත්නම් එක ආණ්ඩුවකට මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ ඇඟිල්ල දික් කරනවා නෙවෙයි. මේක යථාර්ථය. ඇත්තටම ඒක වෙන්න පුළුවන් ඇමතිවරයා වෙන්න පුළුවන්, ඒ අමාත්‍යාංශ ලේකම්වරයා වෙන්න පුළුවන්, නැත්නම් අනිකුත් මිනිස්සු වෙන්න පුළුවන්. සමහර අය ඒ ප්‍රතිදී අහන සිතකුත් තිබෙනවා. ඒ සිස්ටම් එක හැදලා තියෙන අර විදියට. මොකද අමාත්‍යාංශයක් ගත්තොත් ඒ අමාත්‍යාංශයේ ඉන්න පියන් සිට ඉහළ මට්ටම දක්වා මේ ආයතනමය වශයෙන් ඒ ආයතනික වශයෙන් ඒ සිදු වෙනවා. එය ඇත්තටම මේ වංචාවක් හැටියට හෝ එහෙම නැත්නම් දූෂණයක් හැටියට පිළිගන්නේ නැහැ. උදාහරණයක් මම කියන්නම්. අමාත්‍යාංශයකට ආйти වාහනයක් සර්විස් එකට යනවා, සර්විස් ස්ටේෂන් එකට. ඒ සර්විස් ස්ටේෂන් එකට යනකොට ඒ අරන් යන ඩ්‍රයිවර්ට ගෙවනවා 10%ක්. ඒ සර්විස් එකේ වටිනාකම 10% ගෙවනවා. ඒක සිරිතක්. එතකොට මේ 10% එකතු කරලා තමයි මේ වාහනේ අර සර්විස් එකට charge එකට එකතු කරන්නේ. එතකොට ආණ්ඩුව විසින් එක ගෙවනවා ඒ සර්විස් ස්ටේෂන් එකේ පුද්ගලයා මුදල් වශයෙන් ඔහුට කීයක් හරි දෙනවා. ඒ 10% දෙනවා. කොහෙන්ද හොයන්න පුළුවන් මේ කොහොමද ට්‍රේස් කරන්නේ? ඒක කරන්න බැහැනේ. මෙන්න මේ මට්ටමේ සිට ඉහළ මට්ටම දක්වා මේ ව්‍යාප්ත වෙලා තියෙනවා. එතකොට ජාත්‍යන්තර වශයෙන් මේ වගේ ආයතන එනකොට ඒ මිනිස්සු ප්‍රධාන වශයෙන් ව්‍යාපාරික මේ ප්‍රජාව මේකට ඉතාමත් අකමැති. විදේශගත වෙලා එන අය මේකට හරිම අකමැති. සමහර දේශපාලකයෝ හරිම විනිවිදභාවයකින් මේක හැන්ඩල් කරන එක පිළිගත යුතුයි. සමහර දේශපාලකයෝ නෑ අපි මේක කරන්න ඕනේ. 7-5ක්වත් කාටවත් දෙන්න එපා කියන දේශපාලකයෝ මම දැකලා තියෙනවා. ඉතින් ඒ වගේ ලංකාව තුළ තිබෙන මේ විදේශ ආයෝජන ගෙන්නා ගැනීමට තිබෙන බාධා කීපයක් තිබෙනවා. එකක් තමයි මම අර කියපු කමිෂන් කියන එක. දෙක ලංකාවේ අපි දන්නවා ලංකාවේ ශ්‍රම බලකාය එහෙම නැත්නම් ශ්‍රමයේ වටිනාකම එහෙම නැත්නම් මේ වේදම සාපේක්ෂව වැඩි කියන එක තමයි සාමාන්‍ය පිළිගන්නේ.
labor in rigidity කියන එක තමයි මෙතෙන්දී අදහස් කරන්නේ. labor rigidity. එතකොට labor flexible නැහැ. බංග්ලාදේශය වගේ එහෙම නැත්නම් අනිකුත් රටවල් වගේ labor flexible නැහැ. labor law හරිම දැඩි ලෙස ඒ ශ්‍රමිකයාගේ පැත්තෙන් තමයි ඒවා වාසි වෙන දායක විදිහට තමයි හැදලා තිබෙන්නේ. ඒක හොඳයි එක පැත්තකින්. නමුත් ආයෝජකයාගේ පැත්තෙන් ඒක ඇත්තට සුසු නෙමෙයි. අනිත් එක තමයි ලංකාවේ තිබෙන ආයතන ව්‍යුහය. ඒ කියන්නේ එක permit එකක් ගන්න ආයතන කීපයකට ගිහිල්ලා ඒක ගන්න වෙලා තියෙනවා. මෙන්න මේවා මේ විදේශ ආයෝජන සඳහා අවශ්‍ය වෙන භූමිකාව එහෙම නැත්නම් පරිසරය ලංකාව තුල තවම ප්‍රමාණවත් විදියට ඉම්ප්‍රූව් වෙලා නැහැ. මේක අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම මේක කරන්න ඕනේ. හැබැයි මේ හැම එකම කරන්න එක ආයතනයට මේක දෙන්න ඕනේ ආයෝජන සහ ඒවා අප්‍රූව් කිරීමේ බලතල එක ආයතනයකට දෙන්න ඕනේ. මේක දැන් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ ඒ process එක හරියට විනිවිදභාවයකින් කිරීමට කිසිම මේ විදිහක් නැහැ. approval ගන්න ඕන කීප තැනකින් ඒ approval එක ගත්තට මදි කියලා කියනවා. approval එකේ මේ අඩුපාඩු තියෙනවා කියලා කියනවා. ඒ වගේ ගොඩක් දේවල් අපිට දැක ගන්නට පුළුවන් ලංකාව තුළට ආයෝජනය ගෙන්වා ගැනීමට. ව්‍යාපාරික පරිසරය හරියාකාරව හදාගන්න එක ඉතාමත් වැදගත්. මොකද ආයෝජකයන් කීප දෙනෙක් ඉන්නවා. සමහර ආයෝජකයන් ඉන්නවා ඒ අර බොරදියේ මාළු බාන වගේ අය ඉන්නවා. ඒ අය සාමාන්‍යයෙන් මේ වගේ රටවල් වලට එනවා. ඇවිල්ලා ආයෝජනය කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා. ඒ වගේම තමයි ඔවුන්ගෙන් ලැබෙන ප්‍රතිඵලත්. එහෙම නැත්නම් ආර්ථිකයට ලැබෙන දායකත්වයත් ඒ වගේම තමයි. ඉතින් මේ යථාර්ථ තේරුම් අරගෙන මේවා සඳහා යම්කිසි පිළියම් යොදලා ව්‍යාපාරික පරිසරය ගොඩනගන්න පුළුවන් නම් ඉම්ප්‍රූව් කරන්න පුළුවන් නම් වැඩි දියුණු කරන්න පුළුවන් නම් මේ ගෙන්න ගන්න පුළුවන්කමක් තිබෙනවා. නමුත් කරුණු දෙකක් අපි කියමු මේ කරුණු දෙකකට යටත්ව කියලා කියමුකෝ. එකක් තමයි දේශපාලන ස්ථාවරතාවයක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ. ආර්ථික ප්‍රතිපත්ති වෙනස් වීමට තිබෙන ප්‍රවණතාවය ඊටාම අල්ප වෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒ කියන්නේ දැනට පවතින ආණ්ඩුව යටතේ යම්කිසි ආයෝජකයෙක් ඇවිල්ලා යම්කිසි ආයෝජනයක් කරාට පස්සේ ඊළඟ ආණ්ඩුව ඇවිල්ලා මේක නෙවෙයි අපේ ප්‍රතිපත්තිය වෙනස් කියලා වෙනස් කරොත් එකෙන් වෙන්නේ ආයෝජන රට තුළට ගලා එන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ නිසා විනිවිදභාවයකින් යුතුව දිගුකාලීන ප්‍රතිපත්ති රාමුවක් තුළ හරියාකාරව ඒ ප්‍රතිපත්ති අනුගමනය කරනවා නම් ලංකාවෙන් රටකට ආයෝජන ගෙන්වා ගැනීම ඉතාම අපහසු වෙන කාර්යයක් නෙවෙයි.
දැන් අර ආර්ථික විශාලත්වය ගැන කතා කරද්දී 2018න් පස්සේ ආර්ථික විශාලත්වය යම් දුරකට අඩු වුණානේ.
ඔව්.
2020 ඉඳලා 21කට යනකොට COVID-19ත් එක්ක ගොඩක් ව්‍යාපාරයේම විදගත්නා ඒත් මේ දැන් සර්කියුලර් එකේදී 2021 ආර්ථික විශාලත්වයක් වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඒකට මොන සාධක මතද ආර්ථික විශාලත්වයක් ඇති වුණා කියලා සඳහන් කළා තියෙනවා.
ප්‍රධාන වශයෙන් දේශීය වශයෙන් ආර්ථික කටයුතු වැඩි වෙලා තිබෙනවා. ඒ කාලේ වහලානේ තිබුණේ. ඒ වහලා තිබුණ නිසා එක්ස්පෝර්ට් ඇක්ටිවිටි එහෙම නැත්නම් විදේශ ගනුදෙනු විදේශ විනිමය එක්ස්පෝර්ට් වගේ අපනයන ගනුදෙනු සිදු වුණේ නැහැ. නමුත් රට අභ්‍යන්තර තුල ආර්ථික කටයුතු ප්‍රසාරණය වුණා. උදාහරණයක් හැටියට ගමු අපි මේ කාල සීමාව තුල ෆිෂරිස් එහෙම නැත්නම් මත්ස්‍යයන් ඇලීමේ කටයුතු තියෙනවානේ. දීවර කටයුතු ජාත්‍යන්තර වශයෙන් ඒ මුහුදේ කරන දීවර කටයුතු අඩාල වුණා. නමුත් දේශීය ජලාශවල තිබෙන දීවර කටයුතු වැඩි වුණා. ඒ වගේ තමයි රට තුල නිෂ්පාදනය වැඩි කිරීමට අවශ්‍ය කරන පසුබිමක් ඒ කාලේ තිබුණා. මේ මම කියන්නේ මේ අර පොහොර ප්‍රශ්නේ එන්න කලින්. එතකොට පොහොර ප්‍රශ්නේ එන්න කලින් ඒ අවස්ථාවේදී රට වහලා තිබුණු වෙලාවේ ඔක්කොම වගා කරන්න පටන් ගත්තා. ඒ නිසා දේශීය වශයෙන් සමහර ශ්‍රේෂ්ඨ ප්‍රසාරණය වුණා, සමහර ශ්‍රේෂ්ඨ අඩු වුණා කියන එක තමයි උතෙන්දී කියන්න වෙන්නේ. ඊට අමතරව මේ අර විදේශ ප්‍රේක්ෂණ කියලා කියනවනේ. ලංකාවේ අය විදේශ වලින් එවන මුදල් තියෙනවනේ. ඒ මුදල් මීට කලින් අනිකුත් අර හවාලා සහ උණ්ඩියල් ක්‍රම ඔස්සේ ලංකාවට එවූ මුදල් මේ කාල සීමාව වනකොට මහ බැංකුවේ
නියාමයන් අනුව බැංකු පද්ධතිය හරහා යවන්න ඕනේ කියන මේකක් ආවනේ. මේ රට වහලා තියෙන අවස්ථාවකදී අර උණ්ඩියල් ක්‍රම අර මේවා ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ නිසා මේ ආණ්ඩුව තුළට එහෙම නැත්නම් මේ ලංකාව තුළ ගලා එමට පටන් ගත්තු ප්‍රේෂණවත් මේ කාල සීමාව තුළ වැඩි වුණා. ඊට අමතරව මෙන්න මේ රට අභ්‍යන්තරේ වහලා තියෙනකොට සමහර සේවාවන් ප්‍රසාරණය වුණා. සමහර සේවාවන් ප්‍රසාරණය වුණා කියන එක අපි දන්නවා. ටෙලිකොමියුනිකේෂන් එක ප්‍රසාරණය වුණා මේ කාල සීමාව තුළ. මොකද අපි ඔක්කොම Zoom දාගෙන අර දාගෙන ඔක්කොම ඒ සේවාවන් සමහර සේවාවන් වැඩි දියුණු වුණා. ඔබ වටපිටාවේ බලන්න මේ කාල සීමාව තුළ මොන සේවාවන්ද වැඩි වුණේ කියලා. ඔබට දැක ගන්න පුළුවන් සමහර අර සාම්ප්‍රදායික වශයෙන් තිබුණු ආර්ථික කටයුතු වල යම්කිසි අඩාල වීමක් සිදු වුණාට ඒවට සැරිලන විදියට අනිකුත් සමහර අලුත් ආර්ථික කටයුතු බිහි වෙන්න පටන් ගත්ත මේ කාල සීමාව තුළ. මම දකින්නේ මේ හැම කාරණයක්ම මේකට දායක වෙලා තියෙන කෙනෙක්.
Thank you, Ganesh. I think the time is now, over for us. We have now 7 minutes to go for 4 o'clock.
Yeah. So it's a long, kind of a discussion.
So, like 3:45. So I take this opportunity to thank you for accepting to deliver a talk for your, students here. And it is very sad and unlucky that you are not in Peradeniya and in Colombo. And we lost your ideas and especially your language ability, where Peradeniya is struggling to teach the Tamil medium now, right? And also, I'm so happy that you brought us a few, critical issues to think. The point like whether this is a, like avoided crisis or the man-made crisis. Is it a natural one or a man-made? So maybe this is a kind of a human-made crisis. And more responsibility not for the general public or the policy makers, but with the governing people. So there are governance issues here, especially after 2019, we did not act accurately to address the issue. That is one area where you highlighted today. And also, it was not boring at all your lecture today. Although this time is a little sleepy and not really an encouraging time. So, and also, like you correctly mentioned, students, the parent students also not having the history of Sri Lankan economy or whatever the course now, like Colombo. We are very modernized in that sense, along with Colombo. And I will again thank you so much. Thank you so much for those who participated through Zoom. I saw senior professor like Ajita and Professor Milton also participated through Zoom from management faculty. Thank you so much, and thank you for my colleagues those who participated today through Zoom. And I will give kind of opportunity for the current head of the department to thank you and address the gathering.
Thank you, Prasanna. Yeah, actually, today lecture is very important and very informative. Especially, we organize this as a part of our course, the subject we offer. Professor Prasanna, being the coordinator of this particular course, I think doing a wonderful work here organizing this kind of speeches. So Dr. Ganeshamoorthi, I think you are one of our senior members. Professor Prasanna told me all the kind of historical things about you. And I think the topic today is eye-opening, especially because so we currently discuss the situation in Sri Lanka, but without drawing that much attention to what has happened in the past. So I think without knowing the past, it's difficult to understand the current situation correctly. So therefore, your lecture, your speech gave us very important ideas and the reasons why now we are with this struggling situation. In fact, there are a lot of questions, there are a lot of comments that we can make along this speech because there are many dimensions, issues, not only economic, I think it's political and social and many other dimensions, maybe international influence. So a lot of things we can discuss. But my understanding is that if a country cannot attain its development status with the correct time, it might be more difficult for us to come up again, because now other countries have passed us and now they are doing well, as you showed us the economic growth figures. But anyway, so we have a hope that if we discuss these things and then make awareness, right, at least with the younger generation, probably in the future we can prepare well for the election, as well as other issues in relation to politics and social aspects. So with that, I'm not taking that much time. So I thank you very much for you dedicating your time and sharing your knowledge to understand the current situation, economic crisis situation in Sri Lanka. So thank you very much, Dr. Ganeshamoorthi, again. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure and great honor to come back and talk to my home Peradeniya. So, as I said, take this the kind of a discussion forward and discuss openly, criticize openly, right? There is nothing to hide. We are part of the society, and if we can't do this, whom can else do this kind of a discussion? So thank you so much and for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to talk to you. Thank you
so much, and thank you, Ranga, for doing a wonderful job with to facilitate this kind of seminar. Thank you so much, students. Let's thank both our resource person and Ranga. Thank you.